Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1499 of the War News stream. And tonight we have whopping news from pretty much every region around the world. We've seen that U.S. forces have begun to destroy massive Iranian targets, including their infrastructure and the largest land bridge inside of Iran, in a major move to send Iran back to the Stone Ages. We've also seen that the Pentagon has purged at least 3 top U.S. Army generals tonight in a major move, and nobody's really sure why that is. And also, it appears to be that the Gulf states might have joined the war against Iran on the U.S. side. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news from around the world, as we have been able to see significant developments in most regions of the world, including the Middle East, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, East Asia, and also the United States of America as well. Over the past 24 hours, the United States of America has conducted significant bombing operations throughout the Islamic Republic of Iran that are significantly changing the face of the war as far as involvement by U.S. armed forces and the targets that have been hit within the area of the country. At the moment, we are largely understanding that a significant amount of bombs have hit a large amount of bridges within the Islamic Republic of Iran, including one of the largest within the area of the Tehran-Karaj highway. We have also seen significant strikes targeting IRGC ammunition facilities near to the city of Tehran and also other IRGC facilities throughout the country. However, while this news has come out, the United States intelligence services have stated that the Islamic Republic of Iran's missile firing and missile usage capabilities are actually far less depleted and damaged than was originally believed, as currently U.S. intelligence is now stating that around 50% of all transporter-reactor launchers that were most likely operational in the country before the war are most likely still operational now, with a decent amount of them currently hiding within some of the underground caves and facilities, waiting for their time to be called for to conduct further strikes. This information is largely being corroborated due to the information we have received from the United Arab Emirates air defense perimeter today, where 19 Iranian ballistic missiles were fired at the UAE. This is heavily suggesting to us at the moment that this intelligence is correct, as we are actually seeing that, unlike expectations, the volume of missile fire day by day is now gradually increasing by the Islamic Republic of Iran compared to the norm that we had seen over about the past week and a half. We have also been able to hear that the Islamic Republic of Iran has made it clear that the United States will not be able to pack up and walk away and see that the Strait of Hormuz opens naturally. The Islamic Republic of Iran has stated that they will be attempting to control the Strait of Hormuz in a semi-permanent fashion, largely meaning indefinitely, according to that sort of terminology. This also is added on to the fact that the Islamic Republic of Iran also stated that they would be attempting to punish the State of Israel and the United States of America for continued efforts and actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran in the current war, even if these hostilities stop immediately. The price of oil is continuing to rise, and we have been able to see that WTI crude oil and Brent crude oil have also risen drastically over the course of the day once again, with some oil experts within the industry stating that the price per barrel could easily reach around $150 and could easily also reach $200 per barrel. Still, 3 vessels were able to make their way through the Strait of Hormuz, including the first liquefied natural gas tanker that we had seen leave the strait over the entirety of the conflict. We've also been able to get additional news as well that the Islamic Republic of Iran actually did try and attack a Western company within the area of the United Arab Emirates, attempting to target and strike an Oracle data center within the United Arab Emirates. We've also now started to hear that many Gulf states, including Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the United Emirates, are now all exploring options to build pipelines through Saudi Arabia to be able to reach the Red Sea and attempt to largely avoid the Strait of Hormuz, which may continue to be a bottleneck well into the future, especially if the Iranians are able to exert near indefinite influence over the area and largely conduct blockades however they would wish. This also lets us know that this energy crisis will be a near certainty at this point, due to the fact that the Iranians are not going to be relinquishing control of the Strait, and also due to the fact that the United States appears to have no plan still to be able to clear the Strait of Hormuz, and we haven't really seen them working on a plan to clear the Strait even yet at this moment. We've also gotten additional information within the area of Iraq that U.S. forces near to the city of Erbil had come under fire once again today, and the State of Israel came under a significant amount of rocket barrage as well, with a decent amount of its air defense failing, and a large amount of the Iranian missiles being fired, hitting their targets within the area of that country. We've also seen that combat operations are still continuing within the area of southern Lebanon by the Israeli Defense Forces within that region. Outside the Middle East, we have been able to see that the Philippines has somehow negotiated an agreement with the Islamic Republic of Iran that Filipino vessels will be allowed to transit the Strait of Hormuz, and will be allowed only in the circumstance in which they are providing fuel directly to the Republic of the Philippines. China is also working on a large base and is attempting to create a new island within the South China Sea to continue to attempt the exertion of military force of arms throughout that area, and we've also gotten reports from South Korea that the South Korean president is now demanding that every citizen save every drop of fuel, because the expectation is that the Strait of Hormuz will not be reopened in time, and South Korea's fuel resources will most likely dwindle to incredibly low volumes. In fact, volumes that would be so low that they would pose a strategic threat to South Korea's military defense capabilities and other economic capabilities on the southern end of the Korean peninsula. Further news has also emerged today from inside the United States of America, as we were able to hear that after the Russian Federation was able to achieve a success of getting one tanker through, which was largely allowed through by the United States, breaking our own blockade to see that fuel was dropped off in Cuba, the Russians are now planning and expecting to have a second tanker arrive in time before the Cubans run out of fuel again. If this vessel is allowed through, the United States has largely monopolized the Cuban oil markets, instead of them being largely competitive in between Mexico, Canada, and the Russian Federation and others. It now will be entirely monopolized, to where the Russian Federation will be the only allowed competitor within the market, meaning that the United States is largely propping up the Russian economy in a small degree by allowing the Russian Federation to bypass our blockade, while absolutely nobody else, friend or foe, is allowed to at the same time. In the capital of the United States of America, we've also gotten some fairly concerning news today that 3 top generals of the U.S. Armed Forces have been dismissed today, or largely demanded to retire retire due to unforeseen circumstances. Some of these people are actually involved in current war planning, and we have now been able to hear additional statements and also rumors by White House officials, which have leaked to the press, that the president is now planning on possibly sacking the chief of staff, which would be General Driscoll. If that was conducted, we would most likely see that opening would not be filled for quite some time, and an acting chief of staff would most likely have to take the place due to the ongoing war effort inside the Islamic Republic of Iran. We've also been able to hear that one of these top officials might have actually been a little bit concerned about the information that was being provided to the president, as we did get to hear that one of the officials, before being told to retire today, apparently was voicing concerns that White House aides and officials were only showing the president positive news out of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and only showing largely to highlight clips of the strikes that the United States have been conducting that might have been successful. We've also been able to see that apparently the president of the United States confirmed himself, much to the dismay of many other people who've been saying that as a 4D chess plan, that apparently the president stated today in his own words on video that he was only planning for the war to last about 3 days, and that his prediction was wrong. We've also been able to hear in the United Nations as well that France, Russia, and China are not big fans at all of approving a United Nations resolution to conduct ground operations inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran. All three of those countries are part of the UN Security Council, and the permanent members of the UN Security Council, of which there are only 5, including the United States, the UK, France, Russia, and China. With 3 of them vetoing it, that has absolutely no success of making it forward as a UN resolution to largely allow, under international law, a U.S. ground operation inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, although the UN doesn't really mean much of anything anyways. Outside of that, we also get to hear within Paris that the French President Emmanuel Macron stated that the contradictions of the United States can't happen every day about where the war is heading, as everyone needs a clear vision of what's going to be happening so that way they can work off of that accordingly. And we've also been able to hear that the Prime Minister of Poland, Donald Tusk, has stated that they're becoming quite suspicious of the United States and its actions in foreign policy, which appears to be prioritizing Russian interests primarily over most everyone else's. We've also been able to hear further developments within Finland, that they are preparing for larger military and conventional threats from the Russian Federation, and satellite photography has come out of the Primorsk fueling stations, showing that the oil loading platforms have been heavily damaged, if not nearly completely destroyed, by the Ukrainian attacks that were conducted days prior. The Russian Federation also conducted an ICBM nuclear launch drill today in Siberia, which they heavily televised and stated was a nuclear deterrent against their adversaries, primarily that of NATO and the United States of America. We've also been able to hear future and further developments within the state of Ukraine, that the Ukrainian armed forces have been getting some incredibly good success over about the past day. Significant losses have been inflicted on the Russian Federation's armed forces, with the Russian Federation seeing that they are still largely on the back foot, and while being pushed back in some areas, we're also starting to note that apparently they are still not making any ground in any major offensives like Pokrovsk, Konstantinivka, and Kupiansk at this moment. It also turns out that a top Russian general was killed in the Antonov 26 crash in Crimea yesterday, and the Ukrainians conducted a daring one-way attack drone raid on the Kirovskoye air base within the area of southern Crimea. We've also seen that there were large explosions in the Luhansk region as well, and that is largely all of the major news that we have for the day, but we'll be making sure to get y'all through all of the major stories that we have, which I just largely surmised right there, and all of the other bits of news that we have over the course of the night, starting with our largest stories first, and then moving our way on down into the smaller stories throughout the night. And I do have to say, folks, that we have quite a large and pretty lengthy amount of news to cover today. There's about 50 bulletins or so, even a little bit more than that, and we're going to be making sure to try and get through it as efficiently as we can, giving as much detail as we can, and hopefully giving some usable analysis along the way. And moving on into that, we have been able to see that inside the Islamic Republic of Iran, the United States of America is largely changing its war planning at the moment to generally start attacking critical infrastructure within the Islamic Republic of Iran. This is a significant change from prior attacks that we've seen, which have largely been conducting strikes against the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and government facilities. We're now seeing that strikes are moving on into attacking critical infrastructure throughout the Islamic Republic of Iran. And we were able to see that most notably, the largest bridge within the Islamic Republic of Iran, which had not yet been completed and open to civilian traffic, was hit today by a US B-1 bomber run, which we were able to see in this clip right here. So let me quickly show you all this clip, which actually shows the B-1 bombing run on the bridge, which was still under construction at the time, leading to its ultimate destruction before it was even opened. You see that strike coming in here in just a moment. And there it is.
Oh my God. I didn't see this video earlier. I didn't see the actual moment of the strike. I don't think this was out when I made the short video earlier today. I just saw the aftermath of it and also saw the smoke rising from the scene. But that was a huge munition that was used on that. Jeez.
Yeah, it was an absolutely massive munition that was used on the bridge, and it does appear to have knocked out the entirety of the central span of the suspension bridge, which we were able to see right here. We can actually see that there is, of course, obviously, a large gap of missing material that sits within the middle of the bridge, and appears to be giving us a general idea, at least at the moment, that the United States of America has knocked out an entire bridge, and this was the largest one within the Islamic Republic of Iran. We were able to see that right afterwards, the President of the United States then made a statement saying the following: "The biggest bridge in Iran comes tumbling down, never to be used again. Much more to follow. It's time for Iran to make a deal before it is too late, and there's nothing left of what still could become a great country." President of the United States. I have to make it a little bit clear, folks, and I have to make sure to show you a little bit of proof of this. This bridge wasn't actually being used at the time of the strike. It was under construction. You can actually see a construction crane right there, and the bridge was not even open for commercial traffic yet, or any traffic for that matter. It was an under construction, or largely a construction site, if we want to call it that, and it appears to be destroyed before it was even used by anyone, either the Iranian military or even the Iranian citizenry, which has brought about a decent amount of arguments today in the public as to whether or not that would largely start to fall within the parameters of a war crime. Generally, any sort of argument stating that the bridge was used only for civilian purposes or military purposes really falls flat due to the fact that the bridge wasn't even opened and hadn't been opened up until that point because it was still under construction and had not been finalized as a usable and operational bridge. So, to be entirely honest with you all, I don't really know what argument that would fall under, but there really is no argument to say that it's critical infrastructure used by the Iranian military and they're ferrying missiles to their forces in western Iran because the bridge wasn't even open to allow for that to even happen. The bridge had not been finished yet, and it was largely close to completion, but not close enough to where any sort of usable traffic or volume of traffic could be used over the area of the bridge. A lot of people are currently talking about that situation right now, and we'll hold our thoughts and analysis on that for the moment, as all of y'all weigh in whether or not that was a justified strike. Still, major strikes were being conducted inside of Karaj and Tehran, which exist around the periphery of the bridge, which is somewhere in these major motorways that y'all can see right here on the map. We were able to see that major explosions were conducted within the area of Karaj, which we were able to see right here from the massive smoke plumes that were billowing from the central area of the city. We believe that this was an IRGC facility that was hit somewhere near to the periphery of Karaj on its southern side, as it's generally devoid of a large amount of mountains, and it appears that in this clip we're looking more at a plain wherever the camera person is looking at. So this suggests this was highly likely on the southern side of the city. But here is the clip right here showing us the smoke that was rising from the aftermath of the strikes. And that's the end of that clip right there, but still showing us, at least at the moment, the major strikes that were being conducted inside of Karaj. We also were able to see some additional developments within the larger area, as we did get to see that there was a large ammo depot that was hit and destroyed somewhere within the area of Tehran. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly where this was. We do know that it was on the eastern side of the city, but this shows the aftermath and the thick white billow of smoke, which would clearly confirm to us that this was an ammunition depot fire, and it appears that a significant amount of munitions near to the eastern outskirts of Tehran were directly destroyed by U.S. airstrikes earlier today. Additional information also came out from central Tehran as well, showing the major strikes that were being conducted within this area. And we can see that small little blip of a flash on the horizon indicating a direct hit on the ground inside of Iran, or more so Tehran. We also got an additional clip here showing us other airstrikes that were conducted during the daytime hours inside of central Tehran as well, which we could see in this video right here.
Honestly, taking out a lot of stuff these days, like taking out like city blocks, unless it was like a building that had like a lot of dust, like you just kicked up a lot of dust like this. It seems like they took out a whole block, possibly.
It does seem like they took out largely an entire block. We would believe that this is most likely an Israeli airstrike, as we see that Israeli airstrikes are usually conducted during the daylight hours. U.S. airstrikes, from what we've seen over the entirety of the conflict, are very rarely conducted in broad daylight hours. Sometimes they are, like the strikes on the bridge today between Tehran and Karaj, but we haven't really seen a lot of strikes that have been conducted in broad daylight, meaning that there's probably about a 65 to 70% chance that this was the actions of the Israeli Air Force in this clip right here, and about a 35 to 30% chance that this was an action of the United States Air Forces and an airstrike within the central area of the city of Tehran. But moving us on out of that, the damage has once again been significant around the areas of Tehran and Karaj, and it has appeared that significant Israeli and U.S. air operations are continuing to try and destroy Iranian military installations, IRGC facilities, government facilities, and not only that, critical infrastructure around the area of the city. However, the bridge destruction in between the Tehran-Karaj highway has largely captivated the public's attention today and has led to a great deal of discussion on whether or not that strike was a legitimate strike and if that was a legitimate target or not. And a lot of people are currently talking about it at the moment. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so there's been a very, very heated debate today between many different analysts, experts, etc., about whether or not this was a legal attack on the bridge or was it a justified attack or not. So that's the huge debate. Now, I'm seeing in the chat, people are debating this thing left and right. Some people are very much on one side, some people are very much on the other side. So it's up for debate. That's the point. Also, by the way, if people want to come in here and be rude about it, it's going to result in a ban. I'm going to say that right up front. We're here to debate the issue. We're not here to start lobbying insults at each other over whether or not it was legal or not. So we did see that the B1 bridge, which by the way is the largest land bridge in the entirety of the Middle East, was struck today by a U.S. airstrike right after the U.S. vowed to send Iran back to the Stone Ages. So what are your thoughts? 50% said it's 100% legal. It is a justified strike. 28% said it's a war crime. It's not a military target. And 13% said I can see both arguments. So here's what we know so far. The U.S. government is claiming that the IRGC was using the bridge for military purposes. If that is true, that would make it a military target. However, there's one problem. Based on the reports we've seen so far, it looks like the bridge wasn't even open for traffic yet. So it's possible that the IRGC might have been using it despite it being closed, but we haven't seen any concrete evidence of that to this day. But at the same time, the civilians were not yet using the bridge. And we do want to make that clear. It appears to be there were no civilians on the bridge at the time of the strike, and it looks like generally it was closed for the most part. So thankfully, there were no civilian casualties as far as we're aware, so that's the positive side of it. But here's the catch. In war, there are rules, and we have to abide by the rules, or otherwise we become the barbarians that we're trying to fight against when it comes to extremist regimes like the Iranian government. So if the bridge was hit solely for economic damage, that would not be legal. If it was hit because it was being used for military purposes, that would be legal. So right now, it's not perfectly clear. I'm going to have to sort of take the cop-out option here. I'm with the 13%. I can see both arguments, but I will admit it's not looking too great. I'm not ready to say it's a war crime. I'm not ready to go that far. But at the same time, though, to say it's 100% legal, I'm not quite there either. But Enforcer, what say you?
I had to be honest with y'all, folks. I'm going to have to hedge it on a couple of statements and give you all the idea of what it would be depending on what it is, because it's really hard to make a clear definitive statement, but I'll tell you all what I'm leaning towards once I go through it all. If the bridge was completely closed and still under construction and nobody was using it, it doesn't even technically fall under the category of critical infrastructure. It's a construction site. So generally, that doesn't really fall under much of anything, to be entirely honest with you all. And as long as there wasn't anyone within the area during the time of the strikes, which we're assuming that is the case, then there really isn't an issue there. On the other hand, if the bridge was opened only to IRGC traffic, then it clearly is a military target, and its destruction is a necessity to war efforts by the United States within the region. If it was open to all forms of traffic, and it was mostly being used for economic economic purposes than military purposes, then that would most likely fall under the category of a war crime. As while some bridges can be used for military efforts, one generally has to go out of their way to show that some sort of dual-purpose infrastructure is primarily or almost only used for military purposes to be able to justify a strike. Blowing up bridges was something that was done in the Second World War quite often as a last-ditch effort to try and stop an enemy advance. The Germans did that a lot in their flying retreat back into Germany in 1944 and 1945. However, it's a lot more difficult for an attacking force to be able to try and lay out the claim that if it was primarily being used for civilian purposes and an enemy military was hardly using the bridge at all, that it was a strategic imperative to be able to hit and destroy the bridge. So that would be the three answers that I would have to give, and right now, having seen the information that we had today, it largely appears that the bridge was really open to nobody. We haven't really seen any real proof showing that the Islamic Republic of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was using the bridge, or civilians for that matter, or if it was even open. So I would have to be entirely frank with you all. I don't really think this falls under really anything for that matter. It's not even critical infrastructure to be hit because it's not even open yet to serve as critical infrastructure either for the Iranian military or the Iranian citizenry. So I would say you could say that it's a justified strike, but I'd also have to add, folks, that if the bridge isn't open at all, which is largely what I'm seeing, why in the world did we even bomb it? I mean, there's no problem with bombing it, but couldn't those bombs be used more effectively elsewhere against other targets in the country that would have more of a strategic imperative to hitting them because they might be active in operational forces instead of hitting a shut down and active bridge? Because I think we might have just hit that just so that way we could say that the biggest bridge in Iran was hit, and that was about it.
Yeah, I think that might be the reason why they did it, because since it is the biggest bridge and that was the first infrastructure target that was hit, it seems like it was to send a message. But obviously the legality of it is going to be up for debate. Like it's probably going to be highly debated by legal experts too. I would imagine for the most part. There's pretty much nobody on the same page about it. But the catch is this though: the U.S. said specifically they were going to send Iran back to the Stone Age, so that implies they're going to try to wipe out Iran's infrastructure, and they're kind of admitting that they're going to do that before it even takes place. So to me, that's not a promising start. You don't ever want to say you're going to send a country back to the Stone Ages, because that implies there's going to be some things happening that are probably not in accordance with the rules of war for the most part. So, I mean, we have to remember those folks. I get the fact that we're in a war with Iran, but remember that the people in Iran, we were trying to help those people. We weren't trying to send them to the Stone Ages. We were trying to get them out of the Ayatollah's regime. That's what we were trying to do as a side note to this whole thing. We were trying to get rid of the nukes, we were trying to get rid of the ballistic missiles, and we were trying to free the people, if we could, in the process. We don't want to send the people back into absolute poverty and despair just because we can, because who's it going to hurt the most is going to hurt the Iranian people. The government, they're rich. They have the money of the government, and they're the extremists in the Iranian regime. So, I mean, they're going to be fine no matter what happens for the most part, but the people are going to suffer. So, for everybody out there cheering on, like, let's hit them hard as we can, you're basically cheering on basically the destruction of the Iranian people for the most part, which is a little bit wild.
And I would have to say it's not necessarily a good move, folks, at all, and it generally goes in the face of hundreds of years of logic that we built up here in the United States about how we approach wars to start inflicting suffering on the general civilian population of a country, because if anything, like we learned in Vietnam, that doesn't really do a lot to make people big fans of us. It makes a lot of people want to join in on trying to kill us. But outside of that, moving on out of that news in between Tehran and Karaj, we were also able to get additional developments throughout the country that do appear to be showing us that there is certainly a significant amount of positive developments that are ongoing throughout the country as far as strikes are concerned. We were able to see that within the area of Isfahan, there were some significant strikes on Iranian forces within this area, which CENTCOM showed us right here. So let me show you all this clip. We were able to see what appears to be some sort of a smaller drone. Not really sure what type, but it was blown to pieces.
Dang.
And we can also see this cube that was hit and destroyed as well. Moving on from that clip of the strikes around the area of Isfahan, we also were able to get significant news today, which is critical to the war effort, that the Islamic Republic of Iran's largest steelmaking company, Mobaraka Steel Company, which is the largest steel producer in Iran, says it has completely shut down all production lines, which had been halted effective today. This is a fairly big win for our side, at least in the long-term war planning scenario, because this war certainly is going to be going on for a good bit, because the Islamic Republic of Iran will not be able to produce any steel components for most of their equipment, steel being one of the easiest, I guess you could say, metals for a country like Iran to be able to produce and then use in their weaponry. And so for that reason, the Islamic Republic of Iran will be seeing a significant decrease in their war production capabilities and also productions of strategic resources like steel. I do have to make this quite clear, folks, that steel mills and other heavy industry of that type generally almost always fall under a military target, as it is a strategic imperative industry, meaning that those industries are vital to the function and continued operations of an armed force of a country. For this reason, usually a lot of steel mills and other types of industries like that usually don't have any protections at all, even under the Geneva Convention, and can be directly hit and knocked out without there really even being the question of a war crime. In those situations, if there is any civilian casualties that are causing those strikes, they usually are actually brushed off as collateral and not a war crime, as striking the actual critical steel mill production equipment and also structures is considered to be a strategic necessity even under the Geneva Convention. Moving us on out of that, however, and further on south towards Shiraz, we also were able to hear that apparently today in Shiraz, the Iranians have published a picture that's giving us a little bit of an interesting idea. This is the debris of a downed drone that was shot down somewhere over the area of the city of Shiraz. And from what we can tell, this debris right here is actually that of a Loong drone from China. Loong drones have been produced by the People's Republic of China pretty much as a direct ripoff of the United States of America's MQ-9 Reapers for quite some time. But the Middle Eastern states, particularly countries like Saudi Arabia, have actually purchased a decent amount of these from the People's Republic of China to be able to use for surveillance and reconnaissance operations at high altitudes, much like we use our very own reconnaissance drones for. The fact that one of these was shot down, and neither Israel or the United States uses one of these things, and this debris clearly is that of a Loong, is giving us a clear indication that some sort of a Middle Eastern state, highly likely Saudi Arabia, was conducting an airspace violation into Iran today to be able to conduct surveillance on areas like the city of Shiraz. This would also give us an idea that they're involved in the conflict to some extent right now, but we do not know how much. We haven't heard that the Saudis have announced official military operations against Iran, which would be a necessity for them to conduct ground strikes on Iran, because they would largely have to notify everyone in the world that they're now an active belligerent in the conflict, so that way they could work their foreign policy and diplomacy properly. But we also understand that this could be suggesting that the Saudi Arabians and maybe even some other Gulf states are really starting to seriously consider joining into the conflict on the side of the United States of America and trying to conduct military actions against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And there is a decent amount of strategic and imperative economic reasons for them to do so. Currently, all Middle Eastern countries, including Saudi Arabia, are being pinched at the Strait of Hormuz and really have no way to get their oil out of the region. Because of this, the major economic monoliths within their economies, which are the oil industries, could start to significantly suffer, considering that they're having to declare force majeure on a lot of their contracts, and they're making absolutely no money at the moment in any way, shape, or form. And while Saudi Arabia is still able to get out 5 million barrels of oil a day into the international markets, around 65% of their domestic oil production is still hung up inside of Saudi Arabia and is not able to leave the region. This means that countries like Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states will probably find it highly necessary, if not imperative, to be able to try and find a way to open the Strait of Hormuz. And they may see that negotiations are not really a certainty in reopening the strait, and also the Iranians are putting stipulations on who can and who cannot go through the strait even once the conflict ends, and so they might be trying to explore a way to militarily reopen the Strait of Hormuz and try and force the Strait of Hormuz to be allowed to be reopened, so that way commercial oil tankers of any country from anywhere in the world will be able to access their oil, load it on, and ship it out so that way it can be sold for money, which will keep these Gulf states' economies afloat and prosperous like they have been for decades at this point.
Why do they call it? Why do they call it a Loong?
They call it a Loong, Matthew, because in the ancient Chinese proverb, drone with a wing that's long is clearly long, and so therefore, drone is Loong.
Man, I would hate to know, what is the name of the company that makes it, just out of curiosity? The model name is Loong, but what the hell is the brand name of the thing?
It's developed by the Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group.
Oh yeah, the Chengdu Loong. You gotta love it. It's a great model.
Oh, so apparently the Chinese don't call this thing the Loong. They call it actually the pterodactyl. I honestly like Loong a lot better, because I don't know why they're trying to whip out some prehistoric naming convention for their aircraft. That's a little bit goofy, but Loong really does fit it. Or it's the Chengdu GJ1. One of the
Man, they ought
three.
to call it they ought to call it the rip off, the long rip off.
Man, they ought to call this thing the Long Con. Like, honestly, because like they ripped this off hard making this thing. Like, literally, all they did, man,
Oh.
was take the vertical stabilizers and just flip them 180 in their orientation. So instead of them pointing downwards, they're pointing upwards.
Honestly, man, really, it looks so similar. Like, it's really wild how everybody copies this, by the way. But I always get cracked up. Like, every time I say, like, wing long, like, everybody's in the video, like, today, like, in the comments section, talking about, well, what's it called? I'm like, I'm not even making that's not like a joke or something like that. It's actually what the thing's called. Like, they actually call it a wing long.
And I tell you, I mean, they're not wrong. That wing certainly is long on that thing, so I guess it kind of works. I've never seen a name though like that. Like, it's legitimately called the pterodactyl in China or the Chengdu GJ1, and for some reason here in the Western world, we call this thing the wing long.
Yeah, they're going to come up with a troop transporter called the wheel round.
Dude, yeah, next thing you're gonna, man, they're gonna create tennis shoes called Run Far. Like, like they're gonna.
Man, honestly, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I bet that cuts down a lot on marketing costs. Real simple to come up with the name.
Man, you know what? They're gonna create a tennis shoe next, and they're gonna call it Iran.
Basically, yeah.
Man, straight up, honestly. But it does largely confirm that the Middle East is involved in some extent at this point inside of Iran. And I also have to make it clear, folks, that airspace violations of this caliber generally are a violation of sovereignty that could lead to the outbreak of war or the official joining in of a war by another country that would conduct an incursion of this caliber, of this type. And so a lot of people currently are wondering right now whether the Gulf states are joining at this moment or not. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so generally, as far as we know, there's really no way for China to launch this drone into Iran. I guess they could try if they had a ship in the area, but we're not really aware of a ship that has that capability nearby. So we do know that the UAE and Saudi Arabia, they operate the specific model of Wing Long. Apparently, they bought some from China and they use them in their militaries. So that's why people are saying it seems like the Gulf states might be the ones involved in participating with the surveillance because they do have them and they operate them. So what do you think? 55% said the Gulf states have joined, at least in surveillance. 17% said I'm 50-50 on this one. And 13% said it's probably China launched somehow or some way. And on this one, I would say it seems to me that the Gulf states, they really haven't necessarily joined the war yet. I don't think we can say that because surveillance, they might just want a good look at what's going on. That could be what they're up to. They're like, what's going on over there? We really can't see. And we're not sure if the U.S. has given us all the details. So they might be flying the drones out there to go see what's happening. That could be as simple as it gets. So we haven't seen the Gulf states launch an attack. And that's the main indicator to me that the Gulf states have joined the war is if they're actually launching attacks. Surveillance is not quite there. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say they haven't joined the conflict, but I would say that they're definitely giving serious consideration to joining it at this point. These sorts of incursions appear to be gathering intelligence for their own end, for possible military operations against the Islamic Republic of Iran, because they may not be getting provided enough significant military intelligence by the United States, and certainly not Israel, to be able to conduct strikes of their own immediately overnight. So they're currently trying to conduct their own preparatory work by flying their own drones into the country, gathering information on where critical sites may be, so that way they might be able to start drawing up their own war plans and preparing to conduct their own attacks against the Islamic Republic of Iran. So I'd have to be entirely honest with you all, they haven't joined yet, but this certainly looks like they're preparing to join because they may be seeing that there's really no other way out of the situation. And there's a really good reason for them to believe that there's no other way out of the situation right now. Inside of the Middle East, and more so within the Strait of Hormuz, to try and make sure that I keep my line of thought here straight and focused, we were able to see that apparently the Strait of Hormuz is going to be closed for quite a long time. According to the Iranians, they have stated that the Strait of Hormuz will remain closed long term for both the U.S. and Israel. That means that if we pack up and walk away like a lot of people keep saying that we should, it's still going to be closed. There is no such thing as a natural reopening of the strait. They are going to try and exert control over this thing indefinitely at this point, meaning that we are largely stuck in this war right now. We cannot leave. If we leave, the economic damage is going to be untold, and we've largely been defeated at that point in most every way. And while we have conducted a significant amount of damage on the Iranian military, and we've blown up an unused bridge here and there, and we blew up some old man, and then he was replaced by his slightly flamboyant sun, we really wouldn't have achieved much of anything within the region at that point. We would have, of course, killed the old man, blew up a bridge, and, wiped out a whole bunch of IRGC dudes who wear berets and wield AKs. But as far as the actual military objectives that we have, one, we wouldn't have overthrown the Iranian government. Two, we wouldn't have ended their nuclear, ICBM, or terrorist funding programs. And four, not only that, we would have come out of this even worse because now the Iranians physically control the Strait of Hormuz, and they're not going to let go of the control, meaning that they'll pretty much operate the Strait of Hormuz like their own toll booth or their own front gate, letting people through that they want to let through. But if any sort of cooperation is conducted with the United States of America or Israel, they won't allow the ships to go through. So that generally gives us an idea that at the moment, the Gulf state nations may be preparing to join in the war because they're realizing that in that sort of a situation, the Iranians might also try and screw them over arbitrarily whenever they want to if the Gulf states make them wildly unhappy. We've also been able to hear as well within this area that the United States was attacking Bandar Abbas today. We didn't get really any video or picture evidence of that, but we're still trying to find out more information on that at the moment, and hopefully we'll be able to get some here soon. And actually, while I'm saying that, it appears that we have breaking news coming out right now, hopefully about Bandar Abbas. So, Matthew, what do we got?
Okay, so we don't have news about Bandar Abbas, sadly. I'm currently looking for more news about that, but we do have some breaking news right now. We have gotten a clarification from the United States presidents making late night posts. Late night posting. You gotta read this type of stuff. So, it says right here, this is from the U.S. president in a Truth Social post, it looks like. It says, our military, the greatest and most powerful by far, that's a fair statement. Anywhere in the world, also fair, hasn't even started destroying what's left in Iran. Bridges next, then electric power plants. The new regime leadership knows what has to be done and has to be done fast. So I think that right there is actually sort of clarifies what we were talking about earlier, actually. It appears to be infrastructure is on the menu for the most part, and they're saying bridges are next. They struck one today, and apparently more are coming, apparently very soon. And also they're saying power plants. So, it's always debated, and I see people still, they're debating whether or not these are military or civilian targets. And really, it just comes down to who you ask, it seems like. It seems like there's people's opinions all over the place for the most part. So I'm going to leave it up to the audience what you think about this, but that is the statement late night from the president. Enforcer, what say you?
Well, I mean, that really leaves up no ambiguity at this point. What the strikes are going to be conducted against, it's largely just going to be conducted against critical infrastructure, which, to be entirely honest with y'all, really doesn't do much for us in the larger strategic situation. If we have that many spare bombs to just go and blow up, power plants and bridges, why don't we use those spare bombs to, I don't know, blow up the anti-ship missile launchers and the drone launchers on the coast around the Strait of Hormuz? Like, is that just...
They can't get to them. They can't get to them. They're under the ground. They can't be struck because they're in a bunker.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you could wait for them to fire, and then once they fire, you can get them because they have to come out in the open to fire.
It's just very hard to predict when that's going to be because you have to have time to, get the pilots in the aircraft. You have to have time to deploy them. They have to fly over to Iran. So I would imagine that Iran's being very cowardly about when they bring those weapons out. It's probably really quick, a shoot and scoot, and then they're right back in the bunker, I'd imagine, because they're probably not hanging out for long outside the bunker, I'd imagine, because they know that U.S. forces would probably try to do that, and they're probably hiding away.
Well, I mean, you could goad their fire. You could send in a ship like an Arleigh Burke that could defend itself and wait for them to fire at it, and eventually just keep goading them to fire and keep a 24/7 air operation in the area so that way when they fire and they expose themselves, they can get blown away. I don't know why they keep acting like that's so hard to do, because it's not. I mean, we have an entire aircraft carrier just sitting around in the Arabian Sea right now that has, 50 combat aircraft on it. You can literally just dedicate that carrier and all of its operations to just conducting a 24/7 hourly screen over the Strait of Hormuz, and once anyone fires, they get hit with a bomb. I mean, we could do that easily. I don't know why that hasn't been done, because that was literally the plan. Like, if y'all don't know, folks, that's literally been the plan for like 50 years now of what would happen if they tried to blockade the strait, is we would just conduct a 24/7 air operation over the strait, send in the Navy, goad them into firing, we blow up the guys who shot at us, and then we'd eventually clear out the strait that way. It wouldn't be immediate, it would take weeks, but we would still be able to clear out the strait and get towards demining the strait to then allow for commercial ships to go through. And I don't know why in the world we keep on doing other things, folks, because it doesn't make any sense. So we can go around and blow up every power plant in Iran and every bridge, and we can basically devastate their economy and any quality of life, even for the people who supported us in that country at this point. But for some reason, while we can conduct a huge amount of damage on that scale, we just cannot conduct a huge amount of damage on another part of their country that we really do need to conduct some damage on. I mean, it's really quite interesting to me how that works. It's an enigma to me, folks, because you would think that that sort of a thing would be a little common sense and obvious at this point, that instead of just bombing bridges in the middle of Iran that aren't even open, maybe we ought to go bomb the Strait of Hormuz that was open and is now closed, and the Iranians are making it clear they're going to keep it closed for an incredibly long amount of time. Maybe that makes more sense.
I think they would. I think the military would if they could. That's something there that I think the military would have. It's pretty much it's free reign to go do if they could pull it off for the most part. I don't think the president's that heavily involved in what they're targeting that specifically. I think the military, with as good as it is, they would have already hit that stuff and taken it out if it was that simple. So there's something preventing it from happening, because now on the military side of things, I have faith that the military can carry out their attacks. They're very efficient. Now, when it comes to the strategy from the government, I'm not so confident about that right now, but the military knows what they're doing when it comes to actually, performing kinetic strikes. So, I don't think it's that simple. I think that's why they're having a little bit of a bottleneck right now.
I mean, maybe, but we keep on saying though, like, then if we're saying that, what is the point of hitting their power plants and their bridges? Because that doesn't really open the Strait of Hormuz, and that might never open the Strait of Hormuz. So why in the world would we dedicate all of our military abilities to doing something that doesn't change anything? It just increases the suffering of the Iranian people, instead of just having them bomb stuff at the Strait of Hormuz and see if that changes anything.
Because in the president's head, I can tell you what the president's thinking right now. He's thinking that the Iranians have a limit. That's what he's thinking in his head. He's thinking if he goes in and causes enough pain to the Iranian people, that somehow the government will realize, we can't let this suffering be inflicted on our people anymore. We'll have to go and negotiate with the West because our people are getting hurt. But that's a false assumption, though. Iran literally wiped out 45,000 of their own people just a few weeks back. Do you really think they care about what's happening to the people? Absolutely not, because just a couple of weeks ago, they were the ones carrying it out on their own people. So the president's mistaken if he thinks that's going to work. It's not going to work, because the Iranian government doesn't think like that. So, that's what's in his head, though. He's trying to get them to the negotiating table by forcing them into a position to get there, but it's not going to work. It's just, it's very obviously not going to work.
Well, it clearly wouldn't work, because there's plenty of historical examples to show that that will never work, like the siege of Sarajevo in the 90s and the Blitz on London in 1940 by the Germans. That didn't do anything to make anyone surrender or capitulate. If anything, it emboldened that population to resist even harder against whoever was attacking them, and made the situation even that more difficult to be able to win, because nobody wanted to even capitulate at that point, because they were wanting to keep the war going to see its finish, that whoever was bombing them so mercilessly would be destroyed. So that's not really a smart idea to do that on the Iranians, because if anything, folks, we might see that a lot of people who liked the Americans before the war in Iran either get very neutral and mild on their opinion about the United States, or might even join the regime and hating on the United States, and will basically just be galvanizing the entire population to support the Islamic regime at that point, because all we're doing is inflicting suffering on them. And I'll tell you this is how it's looked at, folks. People inside of a country like Iran, they don't sit, or any country in the world, when they get bombed by a foreign country and it starts inflicting suffering on common people, they never sit there and go, our government's at fault at that. They look at who dropped the bomb and they say, that guy is at fault for making my life worse, and I hate those people now. Look at how that worked in Vietnam, whenever we would go around bombing random places and conducting civilian casualties. No one in that region would go, damn, if only the Viet Cong would give up. A lot of them would go, no, I'm joining the Viet Cong now, and I'm going to go shoot an American soldier somewhere in South Vietnam to get back at him. So maybe not a great idea to try and conduct this strategy on Iran, because it actually goes in the opposite direction than a lot of people would think, because every single instance in history where that's ever been attempted, it's always come back to backfire on whoever's trying it. So maybe not the best idea to try and conduct that war strategy, but that's pretty much a failing strategy outright. But moving us on out of that, we have also been able to hear some other interesting developments within the Strait. We did get to hear that the price of crude oil is rising once again, and we do understand that WTI crude is now up at a higher price, which I'll go and try and quickly show y'all here live on air. It is now up to $112, and this is just over the course of the day. If I show y'all the 5-day graph, y'all can see that it is rapidly rising once again. As a matter of fact, I think that is... yeah, that's about one of the highest prices it's ever reached, as a matter of fact, so far since the war started. So WTI crude is not really doing all too well because the Strait continues to stay closed, and I think a lot of people are understanding this is about to become long-term. And Brent crude is still hovering around $110 a barrel and looks like it's going to be getting on a little bit higher. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that 3 ships did make it through the Strait today, which was pretty big. I mean, you know, for anything. I mean, it was at least 3 of them, and one of them was a liquefied natural gas tanker. Sadly, as far as the global energy crisis is concerned, this really doesn't do much of anything to fix it, actually. But it is still something, and worth noting, at least for that reason. Outside of that, though, we have also been able to hear some other developments within the greater world at large concerning the developments around the Strait of Hormuz. It does appear that at the moment, the United States and its Gulf state allies are now exploring the option of creating trans-Arabian pipelines from the Gulf states, as the Gulf states, apparently according to the Financial Times, are now considering new pipelines to avoid the Strait of Hormuz. So we generally understand at this moment, a lot of the Gulf states, which generally always exercise sovereignty concerns over where they ship their oil and how, and they always prioritize the Strait of Hormuz, due to the situation are now actually considering building pipelines through Saudi Arabia to reach the Red Sea, so that way they don't have to rely entirely on the Strait of Hormuz, considering that it looks like the Iranians might be having a stranglehold on this thing for an incredibly long period of time. So that seems to be the situation at the moment, and once again, that'll take a good bit of time. Laying a pipeline doesn't happen in days, and it doesn't happen in weeks. Usually pipelines could take, at the shortest, months, sometimes even years to be able to build, and that means that we'll be seeing that these pipelines will not be open in time to largely avert the oil crisis situation that we're watching evolving right now inside the Middle East. And a lot of people are currently talking about this crisis right now and where they think these prices are going to be heading. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that right now, and what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we still don't really know exactly what caused the oil, the WTI crude, to surge up to $112 a barrel. It happened well after the president made his speech. So apparently people just, like, I guess just woke up out of the blue and got fearful or something, and it suddenly jumped up 13% to $112 a barrel from roughly about $99 a barrel. So that was today alone, by the way. So what's coming next? 60% said oil prices are going to at least $150 a barrel, while 17% said oil prices are going over $200, and 15% said the oil prices will decrease soon. So unfortunately, based on the poll here, it looks like a lot of people believe the oil prices are not coming down. And unfortunately, as sad as I hate to say this, but it's going to really affect us all, I don't think they're coming down anytime soon. So it'll probably reach 150. That's my guess. I'm with the 60%. And so far, I've heard the economic forecasters saying that if it hits 150, that will definitely trigger a global recession at that point. And we might already be in one now, to be perfectly honest. It's just kind of hard to tell, but we're certainly not doing good globally for the most part. So, you know, we could be looking at a global recession at 150, and if it goes higher than that, I'm not even really sure what happens beyond that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that I would have to believe that oil prices are definitely going to be rising above $150 per barrel before this thing ever ends. I can tell you all that that's definitely going to be a certainty. JP Morgan has said that. A large amount of oil companies have been putting out private memoirs in their companies saying that that's most likely going to be happening soon. We've been seeing that pretty much anyone and everyone who would be largely connected to the oil industry in one way or another is already forecasting that it's definitely going to be heading 150. And a lot of countries in the Middle East are also saying that it's definitely going to be hitting 150 as well. So instead of us trying to spitball it here, because I'll be entirely honest with y'all, while I can explain the logistics of how the oil industry works internationally, I wouldn't know the exact details and developments and the formulas that they're using to be able to get these figures. But the experts in the industry who do this for their daily bread and butter and make their living off of these jobs are easily saying that these prices are going to be surpassing 150 a barrel. And if they're saying it, I don't really need anyone else to tell me otherwise. I would generally assume, folks, that people in the government who have either been career politicians or, have worked on building casinos generally wouldn't know a lot about how the price of oil works either, much like myself. So I'd work with the experts there that work in that industry and make a living off of it to be able to assume where it's heading. And with that in mind, it's definitely going to be heading up to 150 a barrel. That's without a doubt. At those
And
kinds of
also remember that they just said today, or there was a report that came out today saying that the U.S. is considering transitioning to a war economy starting in 2027. And also, we already know about the increase of the military budget. They're wanting to raise the military budget to 1.5 trillion from approximately 1 trillion that we're currently at right now. So, they're already wanting to transition heavily into that. And we're still not getting a really good explanation for why that is, because the Iran war doesn't necessitate that. It seems to be a larger preparation for possibly something else, perhaps maybe a conflict with Russia, perhaps, or maybe with China. It's not really clear, but transitioning to a war economy, that also implies that we're going to have to cut other necessary categories of spending in the U.S. government. We're going to have to cut it from somewhere to add to the military budget. So it seems a little sketchy.
Yeah, it does seem quite sketchy, and it also appears that things really aren't looking all too marvelous at the moment, at least on the bigger picture, because the idea of transitioning to a war economy, folks, because of this one conflict here, I got to be entirely honest with y'all, it doesn't really inspire a lot of confidence in me whatsoever. For the U.S. military to be the greatest and largest military on the planet, which it is, the planning of the war has been so bad that it didn't matter how strong or effective they were in practice, because most of the major considerations that were supposed to be factored in weren't factored in and were not dealt with and have not been dealt with, and they're still not being dealt with because the war planning was so optimistic it was made in a fever dream, basically, that the war was going to be over in 3 days. If you don't believe me that on that, we can actually show you where the president said that today out of his own mouth. So, if you don't believe me on that, the war was supposed to be over in 3 days, apparently. And it was not. And so we are now in about a month and a week-long war that was supposed to end in 3 days, according to the war plan. And they only plan out the first 3 days. And that's why it seemed like everything's been so disjointed and largely dysfunctional from this point on military planning, on that side of things, because we're basically coming up with a plan day by day right now and have been since the first 3 days. So I'd have to tell y'all it's not going to be getting any better. It's only going to be getting worse. And I'd also have to tell y'all it is pretty rough here in Utah already. I had to go and fill up my tank in my car today. And Matthew, would you like to take a guess at the exact price per gallon for the gas that I got?
Probably about 450 or so, I'd imagine.
$4.87.
Oh, that's really wild when you think about it. Like, all jokes aside, it's like $5. I saw that like the average cost to like fill up like a Ford F-150 tank. I don't know exactly how many gallons like a Ford F-150 holds in it, but I think the number was $145 a tank, which that's actually like my monthly fuel budget is about $150 a month. That's what I budget for fuel every month. And one truck tank will take up that entire budget. That's insane. It's literally doubled. Like my gas expenditures have doubled. So instead of simply, driving the same, I've cut down my driving for the most part. So that way I'm not, spending crazily over budget.
And also, some people are like, damn, the enforcers in Utah, and yeah, that's the kind of concerning thing about it, is that Utah and a lot of the countries that are within the interior of the United States of America and the breadbasket and also out here kind of in the Rockies, generally are usually insulated from gas price increases and usually see them after the coastline see them. Because usually, historically, how the gas prices work in this country, and we can actually see that right now if we go pull up the domestic gas prices here in the country, is that the coastlines, specifically the West Coast and the East Coast, usually see the price fluctuation first. And that's because of how the logistics and storage works here in this country for usable fuels, is that the plains countries or the prairie countries and all, the prairie states and also the mountain states here generally are insulated the best, and the coastlines are generally on the periphery and they're insulated the least, meaning that they reflect the prices a lot faster than we would here even in a state like Utah. And for the price to be $4.87 a gallon of gas right here in Utah right now, with the price per barrel being around 112, and let me see, it would be about 112 for Brent, and I think it's about 106 right now for WTI if I'm not mistaken. That isn't really giving me a lot of confidence that once the price reaches $150 per barrel of oil in general, that those prices are going to be anywhere near manageable. It's going to take about a kidney being sold on the black market to be able to afford a couple of tanks of gas. And considering that a lot of people have to commute to work, in their automobiles, that's going to be putting a significant strain on the average American citizen to be able to even financially afford and break even on traveling back and to and fro work every day, especially if you're working a lower income job, which a significant amount of Americans in this country work lower income jobs. So, that's
Also,
not.
what happened to suspending that gas tax, by the way? It's the government's always real slow to suspend taxes. They're real quick to add them, but they're really slow to take them away. I've seen other countries, they've suspended their gas tax. I think Australia has done that, and I think some other places have as well. I think some U.S. states have also done it as well, but they really need to do that because it's really getting out of control. And I get the whole thing they're saying, short-term losses, higher gas prices for longer-term gain of, taking out the nuclear threat in Iran. But at the same time, though, the government does have a responsibility to try to lessen the load on the people. And, starting with taking the gas tax and suspending that temporarily would probably be a wise thing to do.
Yeah, that probably would be a pretty wise thing to do, but I will tell you all this right now. This situation is going to be getting as bad as the oil crisis in the 70s. It hasn't hit us yet, but it's definitely going to hit us, and it's going to be about as bad as the 70s was. It might even be worse. With that in mind, let me tell you all what's going to be coming around the corner. One, speed limits across the country are going to be lowered significantly. So instead of speed limits on most interstates being about 70, they're going to knock that down probably to about 55 or even lower, depending on your state. Most state highways will also have their speed limits decreased as well, because generally the speed at which a vehicle travels, it generally leads to a slight increase percentage-wise in fuel consumption, so they'll largely be mandating that speed limits are significantly reduced to be able to try and stretch fuel supplies as long as possible. Most domestic flights in the country are probably going to cease to exist, or they're going to be wildly expensive if they're even being conducted, and they're definitely going to be conducted on a reduced schedule. A lot of the airline companies are probably going to be suffering heavily as a result of that, and we start to see a similar sort of a economic condition prevailing in the airline industry as what we saw during the oil crisis of the 70s and after the oil crisis in the 70s, where a lot of those airline companies fold. And considering that a lot of these legacy airlines right now are made up of other prior folded airlines like Northwest, TWA, and Pan Am, we may see a complete restructuring of the aviation industry within the next 15 years, which could lead to significant amounts of layoffs, a significant decrease in economic activity, and not only that, a significant decrease in the bottom line for a lot of Americans who are working these jobs at the airports and the airlines throughout the country. We could also see the transportation industries, even ones that are generally designed to be far more robust and efficient, like the railroads, could also see significant decreases in volumes of traffic due to the fact that shipping and handling is going to cost that much more. We might also see that they have to raise their rates per ton of goods transported, which would see that a decent amount of industries within the nation may not be able to handle that additional strain and may also have to reduce their capacity as well for production, meaning that any sort of end goods that make it to market would be significantly more expensive if they're American made. If they're internationally made and imported here to the United States, international shipping companies that use ships use a significant amount of fuel, and that is one of the significant costs in transporting an intermodal container from one place to another worldwide. That means that a lot of imported consumer goods would also be rising in price quite significantly, not only due to the increased cost of production, but the increased cost of shipping as well. So generally, the price hikes will be happening across the board for the larger part, because this will start to affect almost every single facet of the economy at some point here in the future. It's definitely probably going to start entering the sort of atmosphere of an economic recession. It might even start to enter the atmosphere of an economic depression, depending on how bad this gets as time continues to pass. So we'll have to see how it goes. At this point, it is what it is. But, on the bright side, everyone, if you are one of the 120 people or so that's a major shareholder in an American oil company, you'll be one of the only 120 that are actually doing quite good. The other 360 million people in the country are probably going to be about plumb out of luck. But, at least those guys are doing pretty good. So I got to give it to them. I mean, they have never been raking in money like they're raking it in now, or will be at least. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news, and we have quite a significant amount of it left. But before we get on into all of that, I do have to thank the 90,000 people who have been here in the first hour of the show, and about the 20,000 people who are here live or watching so far tonight. I got to thank you all tremendously for enjoying the show. We always try our best to make sure that our news is presented incredibly well, and that our analysis is pretty well thought out and fairly thorough. And of course, before we move on into the rest of our news that moves us out of the Middle East and around the rest of the world, I do want to make sure that we take a quick minute to be able to address 3 questions from the chat. And so, Matthew, what do we have?
All right, so let's see what the people are saying, because this channel is of the people and for the people. You know how it goes. You know the slogans. You got to say the slogans. But thank you very much, ARP Bob, for that massive $150 support, and we do appreciate that very, very much. That is the most generous super chat of the night, and we do appreciate that from a longtime channel legend. He said, "Good evening, enforcers, and take one from the chat, and long live the LSA."
And long live the LSA, and a humongous thanks to you for that unbelievable support, ARP Bob. Folks like you help this channel to keep on running, and folks like you make this channel a reality. If it wasn't for viewers like you who went out of their way to support this channel, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running on the day-to-day. We run absolutely no ads and sponsors on these streams, and we try and make it as free to play, largely for being a part of this channel, as much as possible for every single viewer that we have. And I thank you greatly for helping us to continue to do that and making sure that we can keep telling everyone what's going on out there in the world and foreign policy and global developments, and also what is happening, at least in terms of what's in the interest of the United States and what's not, on the larger strategic picture with the analysis. And I got to thank you incredibly for that. And you know something, folks, you know something. I got to tell y'all, it's really something else right now. You know, while all of this is going on, which I got to say, folks, to be entirely honest with y'all, in the Middle East, it's definitely not a positive development whatsoever at this point. I think we would be completely amiss to really say that generally the overwhelming trend is positive. It's largely becoming negative at this point. I do have to say that we have some pretty cool stuff going on the side. For one, right now the Artemis mission is making its way to the moon in the middle of all of this. So that'll be an interesting page in history, that while all of this was going on down here, we were also going to the moon. You know what's kind of crazy about that, folks, is that when Apollo 11 landed on the moon, this mission will not be landing on the moon, by the way, but just to put this into perspective here, when Apollo 11 landed on the moon, we actually saw that the war in Vietnam was going on, and largely the Tet Offensive happened in that very same year while Apollo 11 was landing on the moon. Kind of crazy to think that all of that happened at the same time, because people always look at historical events in a vacuum, so they never think about everything that was happening simultaneously at that moment in time. But it's really crazy to think about that, you know? It's kind of a similar sort of a thing. And not only that, folks, we'll get into this later on in the stream, I won't do this now, but today, while it is the 250th anniversary of the United States, and currently we have astronauts heading back to the moon, and we also have the Union Pacific Big Boy traveling around the United States. And I actually had to tell y'all, folks, I saw it today, and it was wildly impressive. I cannot lie, folks. It was unbelievably cool to see that thing in person. It is a 150-foot long, 7,000 horsepower steam engine, and it was really neat. I will be showing y'all the pictures and videos of that later on air. We're not going to do that now because I want to make sure to get y'all through the rest of the news before we start rabbit holing on stuff like that. But still, really cool. And I got to say, pretty neat things are going on the side. I mean, things that make you proud of the country, but I got to say that, you know, the ball was certainly dropped in the Middle East without a doubt at this point. But a humongous thanks to you so much once again for support, ARP Bob, and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the second question of this segment.
All right, so ARP Bob did request a live chat, and thank you very much, ARP Bob, once again. And the live chat question goes to none other than Coca-Cola Mandate, who said, "Do you think Iran's limitation is missile range or survivable launch platforms?"
I would say that it's survivable launch platforms. Transport-erector launchers are generally the weak point or the Achilles heel of the Iranian missile system right now. You can have thousands of missiles that you built and are ready to fire, but if you have no way to shoot them at an enemy, they're completely useless. And Iran does have a far smaller number of transport-erector launchers than they do of the missiles. So that means that their weakest link right now would be the transport-erector launchers, because they could have 1 million missiles, but if they only have one transport-erector launcher, they can only fire one missile at a time out of that 1 million of them that they have in a stockpile. So that would generally be my answer, still, is that their weak link is the transport-erector launchers, but it appears that, according to intelligence, a far smaller number of them have been destroyed than we were generally anticipating, which we'll be getting into right after this question segment. But I hope that does address that well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Con45. And thank you very much, Con, for that $50 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. And then the Con said, a certain individual fired the highest ranking officer of the Army today, which we did see that, by the way. Also, they just fired four-star Chief of Staff of the Army, General Randy George. And also, they want Iran war yes men in this situation right here. And it's going a little sideways.
I would say that the removal of a large amount of generals today is incredibly concerning. I do not know what that is for because there was really no publicly stated reason as to why that's going on. But there was a decent amount of them removed. And I've seen some people say about our title that the title is really over dramatic because we're calling it a purge, and it really isn't. It's just a corporate restructuring. But you gotta be fair. I mean, Xi Jinping literally only arrested 2 guys in China, and we called that a purge. If 3 top generals had been removed, all of them 4 stars or 3 stars, generally it would fall under the lines of a purge, especially considering that they all happen on the very same day. That isn't just normal rotations of command. That's pretty much a purge at that point.
And also, I can't remember the last time that a Secretary of Defense removed sitting military officials like that. Seems to be a very rare occurrence. I've never really heard of that, and it looked like a lot of people that were weighing in on it today, they've never really heard of that either. It's considered rather rare to see that taking place, and that's the allegation. The allegation is that these generals were removed. That's the allegation. So, I mean, a little bit of a strange circumstance. I think people probably want to know what's going on with that. It's also coming at a time where right now the executive branch appears to be replacing top cabinet officials at the same time. That's a little bit different. Obviously, that doesn't deal with the military, but it is a little bit strange with the timing of it. There's a lot of people being removed and replaced right as of today.
Yeah, it's a fairly concerning thing, and also I have to say, folks, that while the military generally is on a different line of analysis than the domestic side of things, there were a significant amount of people who are in the president's cabinet right now who are being removed today or are going to be removed here incredibly soon, according to insider reports from the White House, including some people like the Attorney General and so on. So quite a significant amount of people who are being wiped out in a single go in the military and even in the cabinet and are going to be replaced. The thing that's a little bit interesting about that, folks, is that to replace generals in their positions and also to replace cabinet members. Cabinet members are quite easy to replace. They're just removed and then a new one's appointed by the president. But for the military, the president can select a nominee, but that nominee has to be then appointed by the Congress. The president doesn't have unilateral authority to just go, okay, this new guy is going to be so-and-so, and he's going to be the chief, the Army Chief of Staff and so on, and just do that on his own. They still have to be approved by the Senate, meaning that new options could be shot down, and an acting Chief of Staff would have to sit in the place of the prior one for who knows how long until a suitable candidate could be selected and approved by the Senate. So, we don't know how that's going to go, and I got to be entirely honest with y'all here. With this happening in the middle of a war, not really the greatest of timing. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And a big thanks to you for the support, Con45, and helping this channel to keep it running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running, and we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of our news for the night.
So this one goes to Game Theory, and thank you very much, Game Theory, for that $50 support. And he said, hoping you can add some economic analysis news on the next show from the UN, 4/1/2026, and Google Strait of Hormuz disruptions, growth and financial implications, and also, quote, the global economic impact is increasingly devastating.
And I think for support, generally we don't cover a lot of UN publishings because they put out quite many of them actually on a wide variety of topics. But generally, I would say that it doesn't really take a lot of reading even from the UN, to be entirely honest with you, to see how badly this is going and the economic impact. I mean, anybody who's not biased and knows anything about international logistics would be able to tell you that this happened in the 70s and it was incredibly bad then. And even in theory, without using a historical example of the 70s, this is a pretty bad outcome to see. There are some people out there who just want to live in denial for bias reasons for the large part at this point, that want to claim that everything's going to be fine and in fact everything's going to be better than ever. But the honest truth is, folks, is that if gas prices being high was better than ever, why in the world were so many people complaining about that like 2 years ago if it was great? I didn't really see a lot of people saying that it was the greatest time to be alive in America with the gas prices being high 2 years ago, and with them now returning to even higher levels at this point domestically, especially here in Utah where I can physically see them to where it's now $4.87 a gallon. I think generally a lot of people can get the idea this isn't really going all too well, and I think that only one who is wildly biased could make the claim that this is a good thing for the U.S. citizenry, because generally rising prices in any margins, whether it be groceries, gas, or any normal consumer goods, is not really a good outcome for the citizenry or the republic. So I hope that does address that the best I can, and a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running Game Theory, because it is folks like you who help to make this thing possible, and we massively thank you once again for your incredible support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, folks, it is time for us to move on and into the rest of the news, and we still have news in the Middle East to cover. We were able to hear that according to the U.S. intelligence today, the situation is not as good as we were hoping in terms of destroying Iran's missiles and transport-erector launchers. U.S. intelligence assesses that Iran still maintains a significant launching capability, including roughly half of its cruise and ballistic launchers, as well as thousands of one-way attack drones, despite daily strikes against military targets across Iran for the last 5 weeks by Israel and the United States. And that was from 3 sources involved in the intelligence agencies in the United States that were familiar with the matter. This is really starting to throw a lot of the analysis that we knew on its head, because the U.S. Central Command had stated that almost all transport erectors launchers had been destroyed within the first week and a half of the war, and we generally took that at face value on the channel because we really didn't have anything to show us otherwise. Nowadays, though, over yesterday and today, we're actually seeing that the tempo and number of Iranian missiles being fired is actually increasing day by day, which is suggesting that the Iranians aren't working off of a very small number of transport erector launchers that have been left surviving. They are actually starting to pull some out of storage that had been sitting around for all 5 weeks of this conflict, and now they're getting involved in firing off rocket and missile salvos at our allies Israel and the United States within the region. This is also a very strong indication to us that the Islamic Republic of Iran's missile capabilities are going to be quite difficult to deal with, and generally may still continue to overwhelm air defenses within the region for our allies and ourselves. So this is looking to be a fairly strenuous sort of a situation at this point, because of the fact that the transport erector launcher numbers are now physically increasing from what we can tell. And there's obvious proof of that today, as the United Arab Emirates has announced that there was around 19 ballistic missiles fired at the UAE today, along with 26 one-way attack drones. This is actually a fairly large number, and I want to make this quite clear, folks. When the Iranians fired 10 missiles at Israel yesterday, that was the largest missile attack that we had seen since the first week of the war in a singular volley. The Iranians just fired 19 at the UAE, which is a 100% increase from the 30% increase or 40% increase that we just saw on the Iranian attacks on Israel yesterday. Now, this is starting to show that there is a decent amount, there truly is at this point, of transport erector launchers that we have not accounted for, and the military didn't notify the public of, that were still operational in country and are now being deployed by the Iranians on the 5th week of the war to start using against us and our allies inside the region. Which is, in a matter of fact, showing that our situation as far as even air supremacy, or not really air supremacy, but air superiority over the region is being contested, and will most likely start to become contested, especially if more transport erector launchers become operational and are deployed to continue missile barrages against our allies and ourselves within the region. We've also seen that these attacks have been producing some physical damage, as we did get to hear that today an attempted attack was conducted on the Oracle data center, and there was also a significant attack within Erbil today on U.S. forces once again. We did see that a fire broke out from one of these strikes, and we could hear some sort of copyright-free news music playing on the clip, but this shows a direct and successful impact by the Islamic Republic of Iran, once again near to the U.S. military installation or U.S. Army installation, near to the Erbil International Airport.
Looks like a pretty big hit. Also, by the way, I heard some reports coming out today that they're warning people that in the next 2 days or so that the Iraqi militias could launch some attack or something, and they're telling the Americans in Iraq to basically take shelter for the most part. So I'm not sure what that's about, but it sounds like they're planning something.
It certainly does sound like they're planning something, that's without a doubt, and we also got to see continued footage of the attack on Erbil right here as well. We hear one of the explosions here. We could also see an air defense interceptor attempting to be used right here, which it appears that my Google is having a glitch right there. So let me see if I can get that back up on air and try and show that to y'all once again. This appears to show an air defense interceptor attempting to shoot down some of the incoming Iranian drones over the area. And we also got another clip here showing us the strike on the base in Erbil, which we can see right here. And we see the direct impact.
Looks like a direct hit right there. And that was a drone, it sounded like at the beginning.
Yes, from what we know, it was actually a Shahed 136 or a Garan 2 one-way attack drone.
Pretty bad hit.
Yeah, that was a pretty bad hit, I'd have to say. But moving us on out of Erbil, we have also been able to hear of other developments within the region as well, especially around the area of Israel. It appears that Israel has taken some more damage from Hezbollah rockets, as Hezbollah rockets are now actually overwhelming the Israeli air defenses and are starting to land hits inside of their country.
هاي الماكدونالدز راح ليه؟
And we see the debris here of some of the Qassam rockets that were used in this area. We also were able to see other impacts that were conducted near to the southern area of Israel, south of Tel Aviv. First, this clip shows us some impacts that were reported around the area of Petah Tikva, which is on the southern side of Tel Aviv, which we can see in this clip right here. And there was the direct impact. And we also saw additional strikes that were also conducted as well within this area. Here's another clip from Petah Tikva.
Dang, that one was so strong it literally knocked the live camera up.
Man, so strong, it had that recoil on that thing. But with that, that's all the news that we were able to get out of the Middle East today, but that does not end our coverage of the Middle East just yet. The South Korean president has today stated to the public in South Korea that they need to conserve every drop of fuel. His words exactly, save every drop of fuel. So it does appear that the South Korean government is already expecting that the fuel crisis is going to become nearly unmanageable within South Korea, which could also see that the strategic situation becomes incredibly perilous for South Korea in its defense against the Democratic People's Republic of Korea to their north. We also were able to hear that the Republic of Philippines today was apparently allowed safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz by the Islamic Republic of Iran, although we haven't seen that really coalesce yet in any physical or verifiable form. We've also gotten some additional information from the South China Sea that China is currently building a large-scale base within the area. This isn't anything incredibly new. They've been doing this a lot for a while, and we'll be waiting to see if anything comes out of that. They're probably just going to go beat up a couple of more Filipino fishermen because that's generally what they do. But moving us on out of the area of the South China Sea, and then moving us on over and into... Well, actually, before I get you all into the Americas and talk about that, I do have to talk about some other comments that have been made so far on the larger situations pertaining to the United States and foreign policy and also the ongoing conflict within the Middle East. For one, Austria has now denied the United States of America use of its airspace, and I quote, due to the country's neutrality law, according to Colonel Michael Bauer, who is the spokesperson for the Austrian Defense Ministry. So we now understand that, including the list of countries that have largely barred the United States from using their airbase, the countries are as follows: Spain, France, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, and let me think here, who else? Britain in some limited extents. And that's about it at the moment. So most of the larger European countries at this point, especially within Western Europe, are largely denying the United States access to their airspace for a wide variety of reasons. And it appears that that coalition of people within Europe that are becoming very unhappy with the United States is continuing to grow. However, I do have to make it clear, though, that Switzerland and Austria do have neutrality laws that are standing in their constitution. One for Switzerland because of the Congress of Vienna in 1815, and two for Austria because of the Constitution that we wrote them in 1946 that largely pledged them to neutrality. So those countries are denying us use of their airspace because it truly would violate their neutrality in almost every single usable sense. So that generally is expected. But the larger countries like France, Italy, and Spain are generally conducting these actions for other reasons, like disagreements over the war, and also another addition that I have to add here is generally their displeasure of their treatment by the United States due to the past year and a couple of months, really, at this point. While that's been going on, it also appears that Poland, which generally was somewhat positive towards the United States, is becoming a lot more suspicious of the United States and its current actions and foreign policy. According to Donald Tusk, who is the Prime Minister of Poland, he stated the following today on Twitter. The threat of NATO's breakup, easing sanctions on Russia, a massive energy crisis in Europe, halting aid for Ukraine, and blocking the loan for Kyiv by Orban, it all looks like Putin's dream plan. And it seems like it really is, to be entirely honest with you. There's really no way to split that here. We also were able to hear that the French president today, Emmanuel Macron, which France being one of the more significant foreign policy players in Europe and largely the voice of Europe at this point, stated today that the president of the United States can't keep contradicting himself every day on Iran. Yeah, I was pausing it. But he stated that the president can't keep contradicting himself every day on Iran. Generally, this is causing a lot of frustration around the world because the president of the United States is coming out and making a completely different statement on the war literally every day of the week at this point, which is leaving a lot of other countries like France in a limbo because really nobody in the world knows what's going on, and nobody really knows what's going to be going on because there's no way to really know. So, the war is going on today. Is it going to be going on tomorrow? What's the U.S. going to do tomorrow? What might be the fallout from that? How might that affect them? Literally nobody in the world knows, not even us. So, that's generally something that seems to be causing a decent amount of frustration by the French Republic. We also were able to additionally hear inside of Cuba that it appears that the Russians are now preparing to send another tanker to Cuba. Many of y'all will know that the prior Russian tanker that arrived at Cuba with about 750,000 barrels of usable fuel, or about over 1 million tons of usable fuel products, was allowed through by the United States, allowing for the blockade on Cuba, which was largely intended to put enough pressure and suffering on the Cuban people and government that the government would naturally collapse due to the significant international pressure, was allowed through, which has largely completely negated any purpose or effect of the blockade that's been conducted so far by the United States over the course of the past few weeks. Now the Russian Federation plans on sending a second oil tanker to Cuba, once again to refuel them before they even run out of fuel from the current stocks that they have right now. We are generally assuming at this point, based off of the prior actions that were conducted by the United States, that this oil tanker will also make it through, meaning that the blockade is not a blockade at this point and is largely diverting a pipeline almost economically to a particular country. Before the U.S. quote-unquote blockade was conducted, countries like Canada and Mexico were allowed to be able to transport and sell fuel to communist Cuba on their own, able to profit off of that and also keeping the Cuban energy grid and infrastructure operational. The United States has threatened significantly Canada and Mexico, as well as other countries, of ever trying to provide any sort of oil to the communist Cubans. However, we let the Russians through, and it looks like we're probably going to let the Russians through a second time. If that's the case, this is not a blockade, this is a forcible military action by the United States of America to artificially adjust trading markets to where the Russians become the monopolized sole provider of oil to communist Cuba. Meaning that, if anything, we're making sure that the Russians have an economic lifeline in an incredibly small form of being able to ship their oil out to Cuba and having the Cubans buy that oil from them, and the Cubans can't trade or buy oil from anyone else, even people that are aligned with us in our own alliance. A lot of people are currently wondering right now whether or not that second Russian oil tanker would make it through and would be able to drop off its oil in Cuba. And it looks like a lot of people, based off of the first example where the first tanker made it through and was pretty much rolled out the red carpet, a lot of people seem to be expecting that the second tanker will also get similar treatment. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so do you think the second oil tanker that Russia is now sending to Cuba is going to make it through, and will the U.S. allow it to take place despite the blockade still allegedly being in place? 77% said yes, the U.S. will allow it, while 8% said no, the U.S. will refuse it, and 10% said it's a 50-50 chance of either one. So I think we all know that they should refuse it, obviously, because if they're doing a blockade, then no country should have an exception, or otherwise it's not a blockade. If the U.S. is going to allow the ship through and they're going to let the oil tanker go to Cuba for the second time, then they should just lift the blockade at this point, because basically we're blocking our allies and we're letting the enemy in. So, what's the point of the blockade at that point? So I have a feeling the U.S. probably will allow it, which is obviously not wise whatsoever. And it is strange that a country country that we're very adversarial with, which is Russia, is being allowed to do this. I'm not sure if there's any good explanation for allowing this to happen, and there's been no explanation provided whatsoever. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say they're definitely going to be allowing the second tanker to come through, because the fact that they allowed the first one through is definitely giving us an idea that the second one to follow will also be allowed through as well. This is, I have to say, wildly concerning, folks, as far as foreign policy is concerned, because we have almost put our friendships with our two largest economic trading partners, Canada and Mexico, on the line and have threatened them massively, basically with an inch of their lives, that they cannot provide a drop of oil to Cuba, but when the Russians come knocking, we let them through and we let them provide as much oil as they want to Cuba. That's basically shifting U.S. foreign policy when it comes to Cuba to forcefully supporting the Russians economically by giving them a small economic base to work off of where the Cubans will purchase Russian oil. And that also, I'd have to say, folks, would be wildly concerning for U.S. foreign policy, because if such a pro-Russian action is being taken in this situation here, which is clearly geared and designed to be able to benefit the Russians economically while completely pushing our own allies out of the communist Cuban oil market, what other actions are being taken in the world in foreign policy that are inherently designed to benefit the Russian Federation and nobody else that's an ally? You know, you got to think there, because this isn't the only instance where this could be happening. I mean, if this is clearly, like I got to say, folks, there is a really clear point here being made on this one. It's a small one, sure, and Cuba isn't a huge country economically, and they are not a huge oil consumer. But the fact that we basically rigged that entire infrastructure system, transport system at that point, to basically just be Russian only, meaning that the Russians are the only ones to stand to profit from this exchange, nobody else, not even our allies, that is very pro-Russian in its design. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. We're literally designing this to benefit the Russians solely. If it's being done in this situation here, what other situations have been designed to where there is an inherent bias or partiality that leans into the Russian Federation and helping them out while being at the detriment of the United States itself and also our allies around the rest of the world? How many more of them could there be?
Well, you know, it's kind of like you remember the Nord Stream pipeline, that whole thing right there. The West was generally allowing the Nord Stream to be built, and they were letting it happen, which was a huge deal for Russia because it transported Russian oil. So that was a huge problem. The current president came in and he put a stop to the Nord Stream for the most part, or he tried to put a stop to it, one or the other. You know, it's weird because that happened. They put a stop to Nord Stream, and then someone blew it up on top of that. I'm not sure, was it Ukraine that did that, or who was it that actually blew that thing up in the end?
Oh, nobody knows, Matthew. The conclusion was inconclusive to that investigation.
So it was inconclusive, they say, but you know, they do something like that and close the Nord Stream, and then after that, then they allow Russia to start bringing stuff to Cuba. It's like, you know, I'm not sure where's the logic in this whatsoever, but obviously though, they shouldn't allow it. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, generally they shouldn't. But moving on from that, we've also been able to get some other news out of the United States of America today as well. We were able to hear that apparently the United States is planning on introducing a $1.5 trillion defense budget request for the next fiscal year. This means that within a singular year, the United States is going to be increasing the military budget by 50%, which will be the largest increase in defense spending by percentage outside of the Second World War for the larger part, of year over year, that is, in terms of funding that would be approved. We do not have any clue if that would ever even have a chance of passing the Congress to even get to the president's desk, but the fact that this is even being suggested as an idea is something else. We've also been able to hear that this is being added on, apparently, to and I don't mean to get into domestic politics here, folks, but this appears to be something that we have to cover. The midterms are coming around, and apparently the significant push by the president and his party will be that the United States needs to switch to a war economy in 2027, with a massive increase in military spending and cuts to healthcare and other domestic agencies to fund this increase in military spending. So it appears that that largely is the push at the moment, and it appears that this is also a part of that as well. But moving on from that, we've also been able to hear that apparently one of the people who might have been removed, the chief of staff, was apparently, according to what we know, concerned that aides were only telling the president what he wanted to hear instead of what he needed to hear. And according to what we also know, the president had begun many recent mornings watching highlight clips that were compiled by military officials of battlefield successes. So that seems to be something interesting right there in its own right. We've also been able to see as well, and I cannot play this clip, folks, but I can Oh, I'm not even going to put it up on air, but I put it on the map because I have to say this quite clearly because we always work on analysis here on the channel. It's wildly unbiased, and if it's painting someone in not really the best of lights and it makes it sound like they're doing a lot of things wrong, they're doing a lot of things wrong. Many people have questioned our channel's analysis on the war planning in the Middle East, because we've said that the United States doesn't appear to have a war plan, and we've been saying that really ever since about the first week of the war, because it started to appear that the military was using a plan that was going day by day and had no larger overarching plan or strategy, and many people wanted to say that we were completely not true on that, and that the president is a 4D chess player and was 90 steps ahead of us and 90 steps ahead of everyone else in the world. But there was a very interesting statement that was made by the president of the United States today, where there is audio evidence of and video evidence of the statement being made. The president himself today admitted that he planned that the Iranians would only last about 3 days and their government would collapse by about the third day. So that largely confirms to us there was absolutely no war plan, because if you expect that a country is going to collapse within about less than 3 days, generally the plan was blow up Khamenei and then just wait for them to collapse. That was apparently the plan. And apparently, from what we also heard in that statement as well, the United States had called up the British and had told them that we were planning on going to war with Iran, and that we wanted them to send their 2 aircraft carriers down to help us out. And apparently the British stated that they didn't really want to do that, and they weren't really a big fan of that, and they would have to talk to their cabinet and their advisors and figure out whether that'd be a good idea or not in general. And then they came back with the answer of no, that they weren't going to join. Then about 4 days into the war, the British then offered the United States that they would join in the conflict, and they would provide both of their aircraft carriers, the USS Queen Elizabeth II and the, not the USS, but the HMS Queen Elizabeth II and the HMS Prince of Wales. And then the President of the United States publicly shot down that proposal and then stated that the British were willing to join after the war was won because they're a bunch of weaklings and wusses, when in reality, now that we've heard the statement today, the British were finally came back with their decision, and their decision was that they were willing to join the war with us and help us out. And then when they finally came around to making that decision and telling us that they were willing to help out, which was 4 days into the war, we shot them down publicly, embarrassed the British government, and told them no. And from that point on, the British government has taken the stance that they are not helping out in the war whatsoever because it's not their fight, largely most likely due to the reason that they have been embarrassed nationally because they finally molded over for about a week, came up with a plan that they were willing to help out and were going to help out. And then as soon as they came up with that conclusion and gave that to us, the president then shot them down publicly on Twitter. So that appears to be the situation with that at the moment. Moving us on from that, though, we have also been able to hear that within the area of New York City, there has not really been a lot of big fans at the moment on authorizing military action against Iran in the United Nations Security Council. Russia, China, and France being a Western-aligned country, are blocking an Arab-backed push at the UN Security Council to authorize military action against Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. According to diplomats, the 3 veto powers oppose any resolution language that would permit the use of force. So it seems that at the moment, nobody's out of the 5 permanent security members on the Security Council, which is the US, Britain, France, China, and Russia, 3 out of 5 of them are not a fan at all of supporting any sort of a military action to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Moving us on out of the US news, we have also been able to hear, moving us on over into Europe, that there has been some significant developments in the war in Ukraine, and largely on the eastern frontier of NATO. Finland has openly stated that they are preparing for the threats that have been issued against them by the Russian Federation, and the eventual military actions that the Russian Federation may conduct against them here in the near future. But before we get into a little bit more analysis on this, a lot of people are talking about the transition to a war economy here in the United States of America, and the significant increase by $500 billion annually on military spending. And a lot of people are putting in their thoughts and comments on this right now. And so, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
Okay, so the U.S. apparently, according to reports, is considering strongly transitioning to a war economy starting in 2027, which means likely having to cut healthcare spending in different categories. So what are your thoughts? 57% said it's not necessary and the U.S. simply can't afford it right now. 27% said it is necessary and conflict is coming soon. It could be a global conflict, it could be the Iran conflict, it might be necessary, and 9% said I can see both arguments. So here's the main problem, and allow me to take a quick rant for a moment. The U.S. government needs to start telling the people and being transparent, because if we're expecting to take economic losses while the economy is already suffering and the people are already struggling to make ends meet, we deserve a damn explanation for why a war economy is necessary, because that means that things are going to have to get cut if we're moving to a war economy, which means, and it sounds like they're thinking about cutting healthcare spending for the most part, which is problematic because already people are struggling to have health insurance and people are struggling to pay health bills as well. Like, people are scared to get in an ambulance because they can't afford the bill. That's how bad it's getting. So, the U.S. government has not given us any explanation whatsoever why it is necessary to transition to such a thing, and that we are owed an explanation if we're going to be absorbing those costs. They haven't said if it's World War III. They haven't said if it's over Iran. They haven't told us anything, and they're working for us. Like, these damn people need to realize they're in there working for us, the people, the 330 plus million people in this country. They're working for us. We're not there to serve them. It's the other way around. They're getting that all confused and mixed up. So we need an actual statement from the government about why this is necessary, and also what the hell are they doing about the Strait of Hormuz being closed and our economy basically going down the tubes as a result of it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I definitely have to agree with that. Generally, I would also be with the 56%. This is absolutely unnecessary and something that I believe is due to poor planning. And I got to make this wildly clear, folks. I'm not going to hold any punches on this one. This has been an unmitigated failure, what's going on in the Middle East. I'll be entirely frank with you all. We're going to be lucky to come out of this one with a strategic stalemate. Highly likely we're coming out of this one with a strategic defeat, which, I'm not going to lie, y'all, don't know how in the hell that could even happen. Because if everything was done according to how the military's been planning it for 50 years, everything should have gone fine. But it wasn't done the way the military planned it, because the military plans, folks, which people don't know, that wars are going to last forever, and that our enemy is basically God, and we're trying to fight him, not just some random country on the planet. But instead, the military planning was conducted by the president to where it was going to be done in 3 days, because like Maduro, we're just going to kidnap some guy, or grab him, or blow him up, and then that'll end the whole thing like it's some sort of a Hollywood movie. And Hollywood isn't real life. I hate to tell y'all that. It's not real life. If you take out Xerxes in the movie 300, you're not going to wipe out the Persian army that way. The Persian army is going to stab you to death. That's how real worlds work, and some new guy would be appointed to be the emperor of Persia. In this situation, you're not going to be able to see that this thing is going to be coming to an end easy. They have no plan. This has been going poorly so far, and now because of this, because of the poor planning and incompetence at the governmental level, without any explanation, they now want to shift the United States into a war economy, causing significant reductions in the quality of life of all citizens of the United States of America, and a significant increase in military spending next year. For what aim, we don't even know. Because according to them, the war in Iran is supposed to be over here in the next few weeks, or whenever it's over, whichever one they're saying today. So how the hell does that translate to this war is going to be over before May even at this point, according to them, but next year, which is still 8 months out, we need to increase military spending by 50%, and everybody basically needs to sacrifice their quality of life here in the United States. Where in the world is that jump made? And there's no way to make that logical jump at all. That's also largely defeating the concept that we're trying to provide the best interest of the citizenry, because by our poor planning in the Middle East, we're now having to factor in the idea that every citizen of the United States is going to have to suffer the consequences because of exorbitantly poor war planning. And that is something that I don't believe should be accepted by the U.S. public whatsoever. I'll have to be honest with y'all on this one. There really isn't anyone to blame here except for one group. The military isn't to blame. The military has been trying to follow its orders and execute this war to its best abilities, given the handicap that they have with the poor war planning that was done at the start. The citizenry have no blame in this, because the citizenry didn't even really know that the war was going to happen, because there was basically no discussion about it before the war began, at least publicly, and the only people who were really talking about it were little voices like us here on the internet. The only people to blame for this mistake, and the only people who should really suffer any repercussion or consequence of this mistake, would be the civil administration that made these poor decisions that are leading to these kinds of actions now having to be considered as necessities. With that in mind, I think a lot of y'all are generally getting the idea of what I'm saying here, is that if such poor decision making is being made, maybe they should not be allowed to remain in a position where they can continue to make poor decisions at the cost and behest of the entirety of the citizenry of this republic. Maybe that's what we should be saying at this point. That's not political. That's just common sense. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, because if I was the president, I don't mean to do what-if-isms here, folks, but if I was the president of the United States, I wouldn't have been the jackass smart enough to sit there and just start telling all my military commanders that I knew better than them when their career is the military. That's the honest truth of it. I might talk good talk here on YouTube, but I know when talk is talk and action's action, we need to count on professionals to be able to make those actions instead of acting like I know everything as the president. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on, folks, and into the rest of the news that we have for the night, which is finally going to be moving us on into the war in Ukraine and also the situation in Eastern Europe. Getting us back into our Finnish news here. We have been able to hear that Finland has intensified preparations for potential threats from the Russian Federation, and according to the publication, the country is implementing an air raid alert system that will function even without apps. Large-scale training for reservists is planned for the defense of the eastern direction, and in addition, Helsinki is maintaining a network of shelters and underground tunnels designed to withstand even nuclear threats. Citizens have been provided with instructions in case of war. So we do understand that at the moment, the Finns are taking significant preparations for an eventual conflict with the Russian Federation, which still appears to be a decent likelihood. Moving us on just south of the Finnish border and towards the town of Primorsk, we also saw that the damage to the Russian oil loading port of Primorsk has been significant. Not irreparable, but quite significant, and their oil loading and operational capacity will be heavily reduced from this point onwards throughout the conflict. Reuters reports that the Russian port of Primorsk has lost at least 40% of its storage capacity as a result of Ukrainian drone attacks. Satellite imagery indicated that 8 tanks, each with a capacity of 50,000 cubic meters, were damaged in late March. In total, Primorsk main oil terminal has 14 crude oil tanks and 4 storage facilities for diesel fuel. You can actually see the physical damage present here. It does appear that a decent amount of these oil facilities have largely been completely knocked out, and it does appear that the port of Primorsk will be operating at reduced capacity henceforth throughout the remainder of the conflict, which is a significant win for the state of Ukraine, and further and additional attacks we'll most likely see that the port of Primorsk may be shut down completely. Moving us on from that and way off into Siberia and the Russian Federation, we also saw that the Russian Federation was conducting nuclear drills today involving the Yars ICBM. I'm going to show you some brief clips of this video, not really clips, but more so images, showing the Russians conducting these training exercises here, and once again, largely simulating actions involving the launch of intercontinental ballistic missiles. These exercises are directed directly at the United States of America, as the Russian Federation views the United States of America being its largest strategic enemy on the entirety of the globe, meaning that the Russian Federation today was training on how to blow you up if you're watching right now here in the United States. Remember that whenever anyone wants to tell you that Russia's a friend, that today they were practicing on how to try and kill you and me over there in the middle of Siberia. We also were able to see that within the war in Ukraine itself, there's been some significant news that has broken over the course of the day. Inside of Crimea, we have heard that the Antonov 26 that crashed yesterday was actually carrying Lieutenant General Alexander Ivanovich Ostroshenko, who was killed in the airplane crash.
So that's why they hit it right there. Apparently that guy was on it.
Oh, Pabliat! This guy was the commander, by the way, folks, of the Northern Fleet of the Russian Federation, and we believe that he was being brought on a rotation down here to apparently observe some sort of forces of the Black Sea Fleet in the Russian Navy. It's also believed that another 6 more officers of the general staff may have been on board the aircraft when it was shot down, but that information needs confirmation. At the moment, we can confirm that Lieutenant General Alexander Ivanovich Ostroshenko was killed, and we don't really know how many more top officials of the Northern Fleet were killed in that Antonov 26 shoot-down over Crimea yesterday. Also, by the way, I have to make it clear, folks, some people are going to be like, why the hell is this guy a general? Aren't people in the Navy admirals if they're at that level? You would be right if you're talking about here in America, but in Russia, the Marine Corps, which is what we have in the United States, which has commandants, is not a separate kind of a department of the Russian Navy. It's actually a part of the Russian Navy. So for that reason, instead of the Russians having Marines, they have what's called naval infantry, but they basically do the same thing as the Marines, kind of in their own way doctrinally. Outside of that, however, this guy was a general in the Russian naval infantry, and he was apparently flying down here to observe something that the Black Sea Fleet's naval infantry were doing in Ukraine, and he was shot down. It's not really going to have much of an impact on the war in Ukraine because there's not a lot of significant portions of what we know of the Russian Northern Fleet's naval infantry being involved in the conflict in any large way. Some units are involved, but not a whole lot of them, so it's not going to have any real significant impact, but it is still a high, I guess you could say, priority kill that the Ukrainians were able to conduct on that Antonov 26. We also saw that the Ukrainians at the same time conducted an attack against the Kurovsky aerodrome here on the western side, well actually the eastern side of the Crimean Peninsula. And the Ukrainians published quite a large amount of footage on this attack, which was pretty impressive to watch. And we see them first hitting an air defense system that the Russians had set up in the area.
I thought that was an aircraft.
Wait a minute, hang on. Did my eyes deceive? Oh, crap, it is an aircraft.
Man, that's
Sorry.
a huge-ass plane, man. That's the air defense system.
You know, I don't know why I was thinking that. I think I looked at the engine nacelle and I thought that it was like a Panzer turret. So, sorry, folks, my correction there. It's actually an aircraft. I got that insanely wrong. We also were able to see that they targeted another Russian system. It appears to be an Iran. Let's take a look at this one here. See what they got. Oh, is that a little explosion in the distance?
They're doing a little something out there. They're doing something to them.
Oh, and look, this hangar's on fire right here. I wonder what's inside of this hangar, folks. Ah, an Orion drone. Maybe even a couple of them.
Look like a wing long.
It kind of is a wing long. Like, it's a wing long with less brains. It doesn't have a head. You know, it's just all fuselage.
I'll tell you what. When they fire these right here, they're piloted by people that are very smart. They're not ding dongs.
Man, they're not ding dongs. They're wing longs. Like, man, like.
Oh man, I bet they got the wing short model too for shorter range missions.
Man, honestly.
Look at them. They're gonna hit the second hangar. No hangar is safe. Oh my god, man! Look at that thing. It's turned into a freaking like roaster. Look at that.
We turned it into Kenny's rooster roasters, Bliat. Like, we've really cooked them.
They're going to roast the meat. No diddy.
We are going to run a drone attack, or as we like to call it, a train on the bots, Bliat. But anyways, oh man.
I think the Ukrainians might have caught the Russians a little off guard with this, because notice that there's literally nothing being done about this whatsoever. The Ukrainians are just like freely going in, smashing stuff left and right, and not a single thing's being done to defend or anything. They're just sitting here taking it.
Man, they're just sitting there taking it. Ah, man, that's a good one. Oh, look, there's the plane.
Oh my god, man, that is hideous. Who the hell came up with that?
The Russians. Like, I don't need to even explain it any further.
Let's put these two hunkers right next to the fuselage.
You know, it'd be a great idea. Let's have all of the exhaust of the turbojets directed right over the airfoil itself instead of below it or above it, Bliat. That's a smart idea. What do you think, Vadim? I have a feeling, man, that this thing is probably pretty nose-heavy. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I have a feeling it might be nose heavy. I feel like they did this just to make it look different, just because they were like, we have to make it look different than the West. So let's just do something stupid, even though it makes no sense, and put them next to the fuselage like that. Two honkers.
I get an idea, comrade. Let's put engines on plane, yes, but make them look like boobs. Oh, great idea, Vadim. Great idea. Let's do it right away. I gotta tell you, that's a rough plane right there. Oh, and here they are hitting it again. A fresh hit.
Look at that. They got rid of that abomination. They put it out of its misery.
Oh, look, there it is. It's now Reese's Pieces.
Oh, look at that thing. It looks better that way.
I think it does look better that way, atomized on a tarmac. Like, I think it's much better looking. Oh, what is this? What are they hitting here? Is that air search radar? Bliat?
I think it is. It's looking, but it didn't see. It's blind.
Man, this thing was looking... Oh my god, they got out the Cold War search radar. This thing is from the 70s, actually.
And that's why they didn't see it coming, because it's a little bit outdated. I'm legally blind.
Man, they were sitting there in that little control box, and they were saying, "Do you see anything?" No. It's been like that for 3 years down there. They've been using this thing the whole war, and they've never seen anything on this radar.
My goodness.
Jeez.
It's in there. Oh, look at this. Look at that thing. Man, what the hell?
Bro, do they have that thing on a German flag tower or something? What the hell is that?
Man, this is so jank. This is definitely Russian.
Well, luckily they put it down. Thank goodness.
Oh,
I
look right
mean,
here. Oh my goodness, it's
oh,
going away.
oh,
Oh, look
they
at that
cooking it.
relic. Oh, bye-bye to the relic.
Man, the Russians out here whipping out ancient relics like to fight the war. I mean, that's something else right there. But moving us on out of the Kurovsky airfield attack, which was an incredible success, we also were able to see that the Ukrainians used a Mi-8 helicopter today to shoot down a Shahed. Let's take a look. We see the Shahed flying over, and in hot pursuit, an Mi-8 attack helicopter. There it is, emerging from the clouds. Oh, and they're letting it rip. Get him! Oh, it looks like it may have had its control systems hit. And it's going into a high-speed dive.
Oh man, it's the Stuka. Oh my gosh.
Man, it hit the ground so fast, it didn't even blow up. Did you see that?
Yeah, it didn't. Just like I don't know if it wasn't armed yet or something.
Well, they're always armed actually. Once they're launched, they're armed actually. So I think it was going so fast that the kind of primer that it has to actually set off the explosive inside of it wasn't able to go off properly, and so the explosives were just scattered about before there was a singular explosion. Because I mean, look at that. I mean, it literally planted in that field so quickly. There was no explosion. It was just dirt that was flung up from the thing. Not even the fuel caught on fire.
Yeah, it's cooked.
Man, that thing is cooked like a nice barbecue. We also were able to see that down in the location unknowns, the Russian casualty report did come out today, and that thing was good as hell. Misty Keeper of the Record stated that 2,497 drones shot down is the second highest daily loss of the war. Troop losses have now hit 1.3 million, and other categories are close to current averages. And over the course of the past 24 hours, 1,300 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed, along with 7 APCs, 195 supply trucks, 2 main battle tanks, 59 artillery pieces, 2,497 drones, and 1 MLRS. All in all, that's a pretty good day. I don't know about y'all, and I gotta say, we're really happy to see it, and we are hoping that things continue to go well. And they are. Moving us on into the Luhansk area, the Ukrainians were able to hit some targets within the Luhansk region, starting a large fire. Oh, look at that large fire. Frosty the Snowman. He can't be near large fires. You know, Putin's kind of like Frosty the Snowman. He's kind of melting these days under the pressure. But, you know, the U.S., Uncle Sam is there to help out the Russians. If anyone else is going to be there for him, it won't be the Chinese. It won't be the Iranians. It won't be Europe. But Uncle Sam's got Russia's back, I'll tell you.
I tell you what, that Uncle Sam, I'll tell you what, crazy Unc. That's what they call him, crazy Unc. And man, it's like, you know, those jokes today when people's like, oh man, here comes Unc. And it's like always the crazy dude or something like that. It's like, I feel like we're living up to the Unc.
Man, I think the United States is getting up to Unk status at this point, because Unk is wilding out these days, helping out a sworn enemy of the Republic. What reason would we have for that? That would be like helping out Iran, like flying pallets of cash down there or something to them, or you know, better yet, connecting us economically to the Chinese to where we're basically inseparable. You know, a lot of the actions we're taking today are kind of like those, but with Russia. It's like, what the hell are they doing up there? You know, are they thinking, or are they doing this on purpose? I mean, I don't mean to throw around the question, folks, but I mean, that whole Cuba thing's really got me thinking here. You know, I've staved away those sorts of claims for a long time, but the Cuba thing is so heavily geared to benefit Russia and nobody else, not even us, it makes you just wonder. You know, that's all I'm saying. Anyways, with that, it's time for us to move on into the front lines, where we got to see today the Ukrainians used an unmanned ground vehicle in the 1st Assault Battalion of the 3rd Assault Brigade to do a little bit of damage. And they also had that sweet music playing, those sweet, sweet tones. We are the champions. We are the champions. But anyways, we can see the
I won't even pick that up because it's just simply won't even pick it up because it's not used to me speaking in such a high tone like that.
Man, it wouldn't even. Oh, look, the unmanned ground vehicle.
We're lagging. What's going on?
We're lagging? What do you mean what's going on? OBS is doing fine, really. It actually is. Yeah, it's totally fine. I don't know what's going on.
It sounds like it's grinding every like 10 seconds or something. Maybe it'll clear up.
Oh, I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. We can see here the drone's trying to get in through that doorway. Oh, and it successfully made it in. I'm sure nothing bad happened. Oh, well, something good happened, actually. Look at that. The Russians are gone, along with most of the building. Well. What a tragedy, folks. What a real tragedy right there. We also were able to see that further down the front and in the area of Svatove, it also appears that the MiG-29 was able to hit a little ammo depot out here in a tree line. Oh! Oh!
Wow. Whoa. They slammed them. They gave them the slammy, the old-fashioned slammy.
Man, I gotta tell you, they giving them the schlam. Take this.
They brought that Moscow Mule and they let it kick.
Man, I gotta tell you, man, they letting it. We also got to see that down in Konstantinivka, there were also some strikes by the Ukrainian Angry Birds unit. Let's take a look at these. I wonder how these went. Is that something?
Look at it, sitting here, lying in wait, waiting for something to show up around the corner. Like, it's just lying in wait.
Oh, Briaga. Oh, there they go.
Ah. It came alive.
Go get them.
There's something. What is this down there? It's a little bit of a blob.
Looks like a Russian vehicle, maybe. Oh, maybe
What
some
in the
Russian
world?
enemy.
How the hell they spot that?
Matty, the Ukrainians are all knowing. They're omnipotent people. Like, they know where they're at, exactly. They're like those people on Star Trek when they were like, they're in the town square. And they were like, how do they know that? They're in this building. You know, and they're omnipotent.
So it's got a feeling that the Russians were nearby, or they smelled them.
Oh, this Russian had an unlucky day.
Oh,
and this guy did a Scooby-Doo move right there.
this is terrible.
And we see them also hitting a Buhanka.
Oh, look, something's on fire over there, and they might be going in for a second time. You know what I mean? Like, they might be giving them a little secondary.
Man.
Oh, where's this? The inside of the Enterprise?
It might be. This is the Star Trek Enterprise. Man, I tell you.
The walls are made of deterrent.
Man, the walls are made of that duranium.
Deuterium.
Yeah, deuterium or something like that. Oh.
What is this?
I don't know, it was like a bee's nest or something, honestly. Like, it didn't really look like a military target. We also got to see that down in the Zaporizhia area, the Ukrainians also took down some Russian drones, including this Granite 4 reconnaissance drone. Oh, and look at that right there. Take a look at that.
Man, you know that goofy tweet that I put out earlier, the one I was telling you about before we went live that was like going berserk?
Yeah.
It's over 1.3 million views on it. I have no idea why. It's like out of all the tweets I put out, like it's weird how the ones that are like it was basically a brain dead tweet. It was literally asking like a simplistic question and it went berserk. I put out like some detailed like stuff like occasionally and it barely gets any views. Like we get like 7,000 views, but like the brain dead question that I put out like just right now, it gets like 1.3 million views on it. Make it make sense.
Man, honestly, man, if that works, I'd stick with it. like you know, it's like who needs in-depth analysis when we can just ask zingers? You know, there's nothing like zingers, right?
Yeah. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna have to get dumber to have some more success.
Man, why say that word when few words do trick? Man, you know we ought to do that on our show. You know, folks, we ought to just stupefy all of our analysis to where it makes no sense. Like it's like U.S. bomb Iran. Bombing good, and then just move on. Like, I think that would probably work, maybe. I don't know. Like, if it works on Twitter, it might work here. Who knows? But anyway, so that it is time for us to move on and up into Kyiv, where we were able to hear that the president of Ukraine made a little speech. He's
saying something. It's taking a long time to load because they have to defend against coders.
Now it is time for us to get to the speech. Beach.
Bitch.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Провів сьогодні селектор на рівні уряду і всіх наших областей, по тому, що в енергетиці. Вже готуємось до наступної зими, поступово відновлюємо те, що російські удари зруйнували цією зимою. По всій країні затверджені плани стійкості для кожного регіону. Вже почалось виконання, триває ремонт доріг після зими. Важливо на рівні громад, на рівні влади, в областях не втрачати часу. Кожен об'єкт, який має значення, повинен бути захищений. Є чіткі завдання для регіонів та основних міст по альтернативній генерації та по відновленню об'єктів. Зараз урядовці забезпечили необхідний ресурс та необхідні рішення, щоб додати в систему когенераційні установки. Все це важливо, це забезпечує життя. 245 об'єктів по всій країні вже в роботі. Ми почали цю роботу, незважаючи на дійсно на проблему, на нестачу фінансів. Європейський пакет підтримки на 90 мільярдів євро для України досі заблокований. Це проблема, що європейці не можуть знайти рішення і виконати те, що обіцяли. 5 мільярдів цього пакету мали піти саме на підготовку України до зими та на оперативне відновлення. Ми розраховуємо, що рішення все ж таки буде. Зараз працюємо за ті ресурси, які в нас є. Я вдячний уряду за цю роботу, усім в областях, в обласних владах, в містах, хто нам допомагає. Захист енергетики, нашої критичної інфраструктури – безумовний пріоритет. Був сьогодні на доповіді міністр внутрішніх справ України Ігор Клименко, доповідав по багатьох питаннях. Передусім я хочу подякувати підрозділам Національної гвардії, Прикордонної служби, Національної поліції України, які разом з усіма нашими силами оборони та безпеки захищають державу. Ми обговорили сьогодні і логістичні потреби відповідних підрозділів, і окрема увага роботі з ветеранами, зокрема через систему МВС України. Це стосується і реабілітації ветеранів, і лікування, та повсякденної реальної уваги. Це дуже важливо. Дякую. Ще одне. Україна бере участь у всіх форматах взаємодії з партнерами заради більшої безпеки та більшої нашої спільної сили. Ми продовжуємо працювати зараз з країнами, які перебувають під ударами іранського режиму. Є нові домовленості. Україна ще більше буде представлена у нових безпекових форматах. Це точно посилить можливості нашого експорту і український оборонний потенціал. Рустем Умєров завтра детально доповідатиме по цій роботі за цей тиждень по кожній країні від Затоки до Туреччини. А міністр закордонних справ України Андрій Сибіга сьогодні взяв участь у спільному форматі з європейцями та іншими партнерами по ситуації в Ормузькій протоці, по тих проблемах, які є зі свободою мореплавства. Це важливо загалом для глобального стану справ і глобальної безпеки. Україна має відповідну експертизу щодо морських шляхів, щодо захисту та відновлення руху. І якщо партнери будуть готові діяти, ми розглянемо, як ми можемо їх посилити, як ми зможемо додати нашої експертизи, знання та технологічного потенціалу. Зараз неможливо уявити реальну безпеку без України. Я дякую всім, хто це розуміє, дякую всім, з ким вже працюємо ми разом. І тільки разом. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
And with that, that is the end of the speech from the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, here on this day of 1,499 of the news from around the world. And that's going to be moving us on, folks, into the second segment of this stream to where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks, what a night it's been. We've had 120,000 people watch this stream so far, and about 20,000 people were here at the peak. We are entirely honored and greatly appreciative to have so many of y'all watching the show. We're always incredibly honored to know that we were able to provide a huge amount of well-detailed and hopefully well-analyzed news to each and every single one of y'all each and every single night. And I hope that once again we have been able to meet that expectation, you know what I mean? But outside of that, we are going to be moving on to the question segment. So I got to tell y'all that sadly, folks, if you're here for news, there ain't going to be no more news. I mean, there might be some, but it's probably going to be very, very small, and it's probably going to be breaking news that's a little like a snippet, really, if it comes out from me here. But there ain't no more news beyond this point. If you want to get the news, you sadly got to rewind at the beginning of the stream, like about 8 minutes and 17 seconds in or so. I'm sure that once the stream ends, though, the first comment on the stream will be someone giving a timestamp to pass the intro. But once you get past the intro, which is about 8 minutes and 17 seconds long, you get right into the news, and it was about 2 hours long. So I hope that y'all have enjoyed it, and I hope that y'all enjoy the next segment that's coming up right here, right now. And so, Matthew, what do we... Also, we got pics. We got pics of what?
So we finally received the long-awaited pictures they've been trying to hide away all this time. We finally have them to show you right here on the Enforcer channel. The thing that they've been hiding from everybody. We have pictures of the 31st MEU, apparently at Diego Garcia, doing some amphibious exercises. So we have pictures of the boys over there. Look at that. Look, they're out here in the water. They're doing what the Marines do. They're like aquatics. They love to be in the water. As you can tell here, they're doing a little exercise down here in a beautiful Diego Garcia that is officially still the property of the West. They did not give it back to Mauritius. They will not have it. But as you can see here, they are doing some work. They got the rifle with them. They got all the stuff right here. They got all of it. So we got a little look into the whole thing to see, how they're doing down there. And these are the guys who are deploying to the Middle East. I'm not sure how close they're going to get to Iran, but they're going closer to the Middle East. And this is the first look we've had at them so far. But Enforcer, what say you?
Where the hell's their iron sights?
Yeah, that is a good. What model of rifle is that actually?
Looks like it was probably an IAR 27, I'd assume, because that's what's standard issue for most Marine units these days. Let me show you one of these here. Let me show you one of these. Yeah, it looks like an IAR 27 with a shorter barrel or a longer handguard, because that's what the M27 or the IAR 27 looks like. So that looks to be what they have, but I gotta tell y'all, folks, where the hell is the iron sights? Like, they're not there. Like, they're not on any of the guns. Like, none of them look.
It's a spray and pray strategy, apparently. It is interesting, though, that they're practicing an amphibious assault of Diego Garcia, which is obviously a Western operations center in the Indian Ocean. They are practicing that, and this is the one that's going near Iran for the most part. But yeah, what type of rifle is it, though? Which one do you think it is?
I see some people saying, oh, it looks like an HK-416. I mean, M27s or IAR-27s, however you want to say it, they look fairly similar, at least from what I can tell. But I also see our gun expert saying that it is an HK-416 with a 10.5-inch barrel. So it is highly likely about this type right here. And let's take a look at the side proof. Yeah, probably. Like, it's most likely an HK-416. That's really interesting because it is like, for the larger part, it is a normal Marine Expeditionary unit, and I've heard that they're all being standard issued M27s or IAR-27s. It's really interesting to see that they're actually using HK-416s in this photo op. But I gotta say, folks, I mean, a little interesting here how they just don't have iron sights on this thing, and also I saw someone say, wouldn't want to
they don't need them.
Huh?
Maybe they're so good they don't need iron sights. They just know how to do it.
Oh yeah, they hip fire. Also, I see someone saying you would not want optics to get wet, right? Well, I mean, like with iron sights, it wouldn't really matter. Like if the rest of the gun's wet, the tiny little optics, like the iron sights on top, really wouldn't matter if they got wet. And also on top of that, folks, you can't just like you can't smack iron sights or a scope onto something when you get on a beach. And also, where are they putting them that's waterproof? I mean, they're literally using fins to travel through the water. We can see them holding their fins right here. So like the thing about this, folks, is that if you try and slap a sight on once you get somewhere, you then have to sight that rifle in. You have to make sure that the sights are actually lined up properly. You can't just slap them on and go. So, like, if this is the training scenario.
Do you imagine how that salt water is, though, like on that gun right there? Like, they're just going through all this salt water constantly. The gun gets, like, salt water all up in it and stuff like that. It seems like it would wreck the finish on the gun or, like, the chamber or something like that. It seems like it would wreck it.
It's definitely going to create some corrosion issues, that's for sure. Like if that's what you're trying to say, it's definitely going to be creating corrosion issues. We can be sure of that. Salt water is bad for anything to get in. Like, if y'all ever around here in the Salt Lake area and you're driving around in the winter and there's salt on the road, go look at the underside of your car if you don't wash it for a couple of months. And that's what will happen to anything that's made of steel, really, even if it has something of a coating on it. So, I got to say, it's rather interesting. There.
Oh, also, by the way, when these guys get launched for an amphibious assault, like maritime vehicle are they getting launched from? Is it from like the Tripoli or what's it coming from?
Uh, well, I mean, they're paddling in, so I guess they just swim from the damn amphibious landing ships to shore, I guess, like, because I don't really know what the point of the fins would be otherwise, like, that's kind of suggesting they're covering some distance.
Yeah. I thought they would come in like on, one of the like, what are those airboats, the big ones. What's the name of those things, by the way? The big
LCACs.
airboat. Yeah, LCAC. I thought they'd come in on those or like some type of landing craft. I didn't think they would just like, flip her in or something like that.
Also, by the way, our gun expert just said in the chat, Matthew, that apparently HK-416s are actually designed for submersion in waters like these. So apparently that's probably why they have these instead of IAR. I'm just going to call them M27s. Hell, the IAR thing's too difficult to say. But that might be why they gave them these instead of M27s, is because these are actually apparently acclimated and kind of designed to be able to deal with that immersion in salt water.
Maybe that's why they're so expensive. Maybe it's the coating that makes it more expensive. That those are very expensive. Like also HK-416s are very nice. The civilian version of that is the HK what's it called? The what?
That's like
It's like five something. I can't remember right off the bat. I don't know why it's slipping my mind right now. But yeah, they have a civilian version of it that's also available for the normal civilian market for the most part. It's also very expensive. They feel like tanks though. Like those are very quality weapons to say the least. But you're paying dearly for it, like to get one. But they feel like tanks. So very impressive weapon.
Yeah, and also I saw someone say, but if there's water in the gun, it's not going to shoot correctly, right? That's fine. They're going to whip out their standard issued hair dryer, dry it off real quick, and then they'll get to work. I'm just kidding around, by the way. Generally, it won't create that much of an issue as long as, like the barrel isn't just filled with water. There shouldn't really be a problem with it. Like a little bit of water on a gun, it's not going to kill it. So it should be fine. Like any normal gun would be fine.
MR556, J Beck will said it. That's the one I was trying to think about right there. I think they have a 7.62 as well, the civilian version that you can get. Very nice. It's just, it's basically just an AR for the most part. That's just really like well built. So it's kind of hard, at least in my head, to justify, something that's so expensive. It's several $1,000s for one of them. But, for military use, it's obviously, you don't have to worry about that too much in the military. You just simply buy the things and that's the end of the story. So they get to play around with some nice stuff. I will say. Also, I will say, I'm kind of jealous. That is some nice looking water right there. Like that is like the perfect shade of blue right there in that water off of Diego Garcia. That looks like a perfect beach vacation as long as you don't have to actually get sent into a real war zone.
Wow, man. That's so nice. The U.S. ought to annex this from the British and open up a casino and golf course and see how quickly we can bankrupt it. That ought to be a good idea.
You said a casino?
Yeah, a casino and a golf course. Nothing ever says, real estate development like casinos and golf courses. Am I right?
I tell you what, I've already opened one though. I'm going to open one day in Cuba. Matt's hotel. With the big MATT on top of it and stuff like that. I've already got dibs on it. Whenever they lift the sanctions and stuff like that, we're going to have to put that down there because they've got good beaches too. It just needs a little bit of work.
Also, by the way, I know some people are like, that looks like AI. No, the waters around Diego Garcia are really just that blue. Like you can actually see it from here. Exceptionally blue. It's basically bathwater blue. Let me see if I can get y'all some pictures here that were taken near. Oh yeah, of course they wouldn't have pictures. Let me see if I can get y'all some. Yeah, they don't allow anyone to take any pictures, but it is truly blue. Like I wish I could show y'all from the ground perspective down there, but it is bathtub water in crystal blue for the larger part. So that is Diego Garcia. There's no question about it. Because I see some people saying that is AI water. No, no. And the military, the U.S. Marines are not going to put out an AI-generated image. I can tell you all that right now. Some people in the Department of Defense might, but not in the Marines. They wouldn't do that. Like also there's some other minor details here that would give us an idea this is certainly not an AI made picture. But very interesting to see nonetheless. So apparently they are definitely in the area and they're just training, training for amphibious landings and amphibious assaults. So
Indeed.
we'll have to see. But anyway.
Also, by the way, we do have a poll to address that's currently running. This one's been running for quite some time, about 30 minutes or so. And it says, how are you feeling about the state of the world? To get an idea of where the audience's mental state is at right now with everything happening around the world. I'm just kind of curious about that. So 60% said a negative outlook. The outlook isn't good. So that's apparently the most popular choice. About 60% said that. 21% said, I have a positive outlook. Things will improve. And 14% said, I'm neutral. There are highs and lows. So, generally speaking, the way I like to keep my mindset is positive no matter what the circumstances are. But I will admit, at this point in time in the world, it's kind of hard to do that. I would be fooling people and also lying to say otherwise. So, me personally, my outlook is not a very good one when I'm being realistic. But in reality, though, I tell myself, just put it aside. I'll just be straight up. I just literally put it aside and I try not to think about it too much. And I just try to look at it from a third party perspective, like looking at it as an observer for the most part and trying to pretend like I'm not, in the midst of it for the most part. So generally speaking, I'm with the 60%, but I like to convince myself to be positive at the same time. But a very interesting perspective on the audience's viewpoints here. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I would be within the 60%, but I do try and look out for some things that make me kind of like happy. I'll be entirely honest with y'all folks, like covering this war in Iran is getting really tough because with each passing day it's getting worse. And I'm not going to lie, folks, like, it's our job to cover the news, whether it's good or bad, but it personally pains me mentally, especially when it deals with the country, to see that something's going poorly for the nation. And so I'm not really that positive these days at the moment, but I do look for things that do make me positive, like the Artemis 2 mission. That's a pretty cool thing for the country. Like the big boy showed up today. That was pretty cool. So I look for some positive things and I try and find some excitement in them and be like, oh, well, these are good things. These are reasons to be proud of the country and to be positive about it. But the Middle East is such a bad situation. It's really hard to look past that and go, oh, things are generally, even just, it is what it is. It's good and it's bad. It's like, it's getting worse and it's not getting any better. And, and I'm sure a lot of y'all can probably maybe tell that a little bit because at the beginning of the war, things weren't going badly yet because things couldn't have gone badly. It was just so early on. But the war keeps going and each week is truly getting worse. And it doesn't really look like anything's going to be changing anytime round. Then I gets.
I haven't gotten outside. I haven't gotten outside in 2 days because it's been raining, and also today it was snowing. Oddly enough, it was just like almost like 90 degrees like a week ago, and now it was snowing today out here in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I haven't gotten outside in 2 days. So that's made it extra worse because now when you stay inside, like I get on Twitter and work on there like usual, but I do it extra because I haven't gotten outside. So then I'm literally sitting there all day, like looking at all these crazy takes nonstop from the crazy Twitter crowd out there. And I'm just thinking, my God, I'm like, geez, like how like, wild, like, can we get here? Like with people saying crazy stuff left and right and also delusional. But that's the problem with social media. When you get on there and start looking at all these different opinions, first of all, you don't know if you're looking at a real person or a bot. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, people feel like they just say whatever online. Like they may not say that in real life, but online they feel emboldened to say it. So they say it and you start seeing the insanity or the depths of insanity that's in some people's heads, which is bothersome, to say the least. And then number three, it's just probably best to stay the hell off. It's probably best to stay the hell off of social media if you can avoid it for the most part, I would say.
Yeah, honestly, I would generally agree. But also, folks, I got to say there are some positive things there are positive things in our life that make me happy. But when I look at what we have to cover for our job with the news, it doesn't make me happy much at all. Like, I'll be entirely honest with y'all, folks. If I was unfiltered for a minute on this show and actually tell you what I was really thinking, like, I would be livid. I'm just gonna be straight up with y'all. My honest opinion and outlook of the situation right now is that truly I'm livid. I play that down a great deal when we're on air, but when I think about this off air, I probably turn beet red from anger about how poorly this was planned and executed. I expect a lot better from our elected officials than to see that something is done this shittily. Me personally, I have standards, folks. I have high standards, and this doesn't meet my standards. This isn't Los Pollos material and quality right here, not at all. But outside of that, though, I will say that there's a lot of things to be happy for in our personal lives with what we do every day. Like, we live in Salt Lake City. In my opinion, there's really no greater place to be. It's not as unaffordable as other parts of the country. It's very pretty here. It's very nice. The people are nice. There's a lot of stuff to do. Generally, things are going fine. In our own personal lives, they're great, really. I mean, there's not really a lot to complain about. But when, you got to do this every day of your life as a job, and so, you really concern yourself about how the country's going in foreign policy, and it's going this damn badly, that gets quite enraging, really. But outside of that, though, there was something really positive that happened today, folks, and I want to share it with y'all. It's going to grind Matthew's gears for me to share it with y'all, but I gotta share it with y'all because I made this free for you to see on Patreon. If y'all want to go click on it, by the way, I think this is one of the few things that we've ever made free to see on Patreon, but I wanted y'all to see it, whether y'all were paying members of Patreon or not, because the big boy came to Salt Lake today, and I took this baller picture of it right there.
Oh, wow.
Man, that eagle is made of gold.
Ooh.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat, right? It's pretty neat. But here's the real picture of it, like the main picture. This thing whipped into town. Would y'all believe it, folks? The biggest, largest operational locomotive in the world, actually, steam locomotive, that is, came here to Salt Lake City. Isn't that just the neatest thing ever? I took a lot of up-close pictures of it because they actually allow people to get close to it. So I took a picture of, like, the smoke hood, and, I took a picture of the front of the engine. Like, the beams of light were coming through the clouds right on this thing. It was a really cool picture. And also I took a picture of the tender, and I took a picture of the running gears as well, up close on the big boy. But also, by the way, I have to say this, folks, like, I actually ran into, Matthew, you wouldn't believe this, Matthew, it was like a unicorn sighting. I actually ran into Union Pacific Railroad police that were hanging out around the engine while everyone was allowed to come look at it up close. And I was, like, blown away with it. I took a picture of them, but for the respect for their privacy, I was going to show y'all all what they actually look like because their uniforms were pretty cool and everything, but, there's nuts on the internet, and I don't want to show anyone's faces, which is where they might get, hounded by some nut or something like that, so I decided not to show it.
You didn't see the back of the patrol car, did you?
No, hell no. Like, absolutely not. Certainly not.
They didn't get the handcuff treatment, did you?
Hell no. Like, no, I didn't. But I sat there and talked to him a little bit. I was like, so how does y'all's jurisdiction work? What do y'all generally do? So they told me, folks, that the main thing that the railroad police do, and someone's like, railroad police? Yeah, actually, the railroad companies in this country actually have little police departments, and the Union Pacific's is 130 people strong, and they have to cover the entirety of the Union Pacific's trackage, which is basically everything west of the Mississippi, which is quite a lot of ground to cover. But basically, they told me rundown was they basically deal with homeless camps and clearing them out from near to the tracks. They call them transients, but it's homeless camps. So basically, Great Depression era stuff. You go around to the hobo camps. You're like, all right, get your asses moving. You can go anywhere, but you can't be here. So that's kind of what they do. And then they also deal with a whole bunch of other stuff, like railway theft, like like robbing trains and stuff, which is kind of an interesting thing. They said they deal with that a little bit. But it was a pretty interesting getting to talk to him a little bit, and also getting up close to the locomotive. And also, by the way, folks, I took videos of this thing on the move. Like, I took some videos. I want to show... Oh, that's loud as hell, but I want to show a couple of them to y'all because I got to tell y'all, folks, seeing this thing in real life is a lot different than seeing it on the internet. And even showing it right now, it's not really going to get the point across. But when you see this thing in person, folks, it's 150 feet long. So it's like half of a Saturn V flipped over onto the ground as the thing. Like, it's just insane. So I'll show you a little clip of it I took here in Ogden, in the middle of it just snowing like hell. There was so much snow coming down. It was this thick, like, globs of ice stuff, almost. It wasn't even really snow. It was almost like hail, honestly. But that thing is loud as hail, speaking of which. But here's the clip. This was it passing through Ogden. I mean, it was something else.
Are you sure we can show this footage?
Absolutely. I own it. Like, it's my footage. That one right there under that bridge, man, like the sound bounced off of the bottom of that bridge right into my ears. I almost went deaf from that one. Also, by the way, they were carrying around, you can kind of see it right there, the Abraham Lincoln, which is painted up specifically for the President Abraham Lincoln. Let me get on this one real quick, hopefully not blow our ears out. You can actually see this one up close. This was the only clip I actually looked at that one. But there is the Abraham Lincoln. Isn't that neat?
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, pretty cool. But overall, if you want to see the full clips, folks, you can go and click on the Patreon. They're free to watch. I made them free to watch. That way y'all can all see it. Really cool engine. Really neat to see it in person. It'll be coming back through Salt Lake in Ogden on the 18th and the 19th. But I mean, this thing is truly a sight to behold, and you can actually see, this was also cool, folks. It was covered in ice on the front of the engine when it came into Salt Lake, because the snow had gotten so heavy, it was sticking to the front of the engine and freezing onto it, so it came into town almost like covered in icicles and stuff, and I was like, that is just crazy, and they painted it up for the 250th. I mean, that was a pretty neat thing to see today, I'm not gonna lie. Like, peak American engineering for the railroads right here, and you wouldn't believe it, folks. Just one more thing before we get to the Super Chats. This one engine right here has 7,000 horsepower. There's really no way to actually measure horsepower for a steam engine, so they try their best. They generally go with this measurement called tractive effort, but the supposed horsepower of this thing, if it actually really could be measured, would be about 7,000 horsepower, which is pretty much 2 modern diesel locomotives put together back to back, and that's about the horsepower this one thing makes. That's absolutely crazy right there, to think that this thing is also, at this point, about 90 years old by the time it was produced. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on and into the question segment. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
So our first Super Chat for our last Super Chat segment, and also getting our live chats after that, our first one goes to Winston Smith. And thank you very much, Winston, for that $28 support, and we do appreciate that. He said, I really appreciate the show, and I love the nonpartisan takes and focus away from domestic politics, and you are true patriots and good moral humans, and don't change whatsoever, and I wish our leaders could be half as awesome as you, and LSA. And also, thank you for the kind words, by the way. We have found it to be somewhat of a challenge. When it comes around to times like this, it's always difficult because we are obviously Americans and we are patriots, but a patriot, in my view, is somebody who cares about the country, not somebody that cares about a political party or cares about one politician. Those aren't patriots, those are fools, in my personal opinion. I know it's going to piss some people off, but that's what I really think. So, you know, we pledge allegiance to the country, not to a person, and it's been that way since the country was founded. So, and also, by the way, even if I am an American, America does something that is possibly questionable, I won't hesitate to call it out. That's what makes America unique. It makes us different from the rest of the world, and I'm proud of that, and we should adhere to it. We shouldn't just toss it out the window when it gets convenient. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that generally, I gotta say thank you for the incredibly high praise and the kind words. I'd hate to say this, Winston, because I hate to be a downer, but that's probably the reason why we'll never succeed in politics, is because I'm not going to compromise on moral fiber or integrity to achieve a political position or to climb the political ladder. And how politics works these days, it's always kind of worked like this, but it ebbs and flows. These days, you've got to basically be a crook to make it anywhere up there. And that's probably going to handicap me a great deal because, you know, you got me coming in. Crooks aren't going to want to deal with someone who's, you know, level-headed and works by the book in the interest of the country or for the interest of the country over the party. And that's also something that annoys me greatly these days, is that people put allegiance to a political party over the country. And I hear many people out there in the political world who claim, I'm a real American patriot. And I would say that all those people are bastards. Just about all of them. None of them are patriots. All of them are damn ideologues for their political parties that they worship, basically. If it came down to would they obliterate the concept of the United States of America to promote their political party, they would obliterate the United States of America to turn it into whatever political party they believe in. And that's the shame of it, is that those people want to call themselves patriots, and they denigrate the ideas and the ideology that go along with being a true patriot, which is looking out for the best interest of the country, which means that we don't root for a single man or a single political party. We root for what's best for the citizenry, and those people can be wrong in the political party and as an individual. And that's something that annoys me greatly these days, because for 4 years now, we've covered this news as about straightforward as we can. We call the shots for what they are. If they're good, they're good. If they don't look good, they're not good. And people would rather put their feelings and their ideologue cult worshiping as a priority over what's best for the country. And that's what I find to be very annoying about this nation these days. It's a sad state of affairs, because you can't really speak any truth these days about whether something's going good or not, because the political mobs will try and just tear you down over that and basically ensure that your story or your analysis never sees the light of day, because it's not just literally just basically just ass kissing whoever's in charge that they like. And that's just wildly annoying to me. And what's even more annoying is that the people in charge, like the ones right now, they don't even want to hear anything that makes them not sound perfect. They have to be perfect, they have to be ass kissed, and they have to be placated. Otherwise, you're an enemy of the country somehow by saying that they might not be doing everything perfectly. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help us to be on air and do this. And whether or not we ever have a political career, I hope that we're able to stick around being a voice to the public for an incredibly long time, telling y'all what's in the interest of the nation and what's not in the most unbiased and straightforward way that we can. And so a humongous thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Crispy, and thank you very much, Crispy, for that $20 support as well. They did not leave a comment, but we do appreciate that, as always, very much for helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 20 from Jesusium, who said, Ukraine special operation, 3 days to complete. Iran special operation, 3 days to complete. Have we all been Russian this entire time? LOL, LSA. We're not Russian, but I guess you could say we're Russian to failure at this point. No pun intended. But also, it is a little bit weird, though. Like, it's almost comical to a certain degree, how much that matches up with what Putin said about Ukraine. It's like, are they trying to make it analogous? It's like, Putin said 3 days for Ukraine. They're saying 3 days for Iran is how long they thought it was going to take. It's like, you couldn't get any closer if you tried. I'm not sure if they're doing that intentionally or not. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I mean, Jesusium, that is one that has been blowing my mind, is that statement was made today. And there has been so many people out there, folks, for a month now, as we've been saying, well, it doesn't look like there was any plan. It looks like they were expecting this whole thing to end in like a few days, and they don't have a plan outside of the first few days. Oh, Enforcer, you're just trying to bash the president. And then the president comes out today and literally says exactly what we said happened, which is that he planned the war, and he told everyone to plan the war, where it only lasted for 3 days. And we had heard that a while ago. Like, we had heard that a while ago because a White House official, an anonymous one, leaked out to the press that the president had told all of his advisors and military planners to plan the war where the Strait of Hormuz was never considered, because they expected that the Iranian government would collapse so quickly that would never be a problem. So the entire time that we've been on this show, and I've been saying, if there was any point of failure in this bad plan, it had to be the president, because he's the only one who's never served in the military, he isn't a career military official who has never had any military experience. And so clearly, with such a egregious fault as this, it has to be this guy who did it. And he basically admitted that today, because he said, according to his predictions, which are basically law up there right now, because no one can tell him that he's wrong, he was only planning it to last for 3 days, and then it didn't, and now we're where we're at right now, which is basically just effed over. And that is something else right there. Like, it's like who in the hell would sit there and be that optimistic? Like, and also, there's so many people who were overly optimistic like that before the war. Like, I was telling people, the Strait of Hormuz is going to take a couple of weeks to clear at best if we do that starting on day one, because they're going to definitely try and launch their spring trap on that strait. And people were telling me, oh, Enforcer, you're anti-American because you're being a realist. We're going to clear that thing in 2 hours. Well, it's a month and a week later, and I haven't seen them clear it in 2 hours, because 2 hours has lapsed about a couple of hundred times at this point by right now. And it's like, hell, it's like, maybe if people would think realistically and think with their damn heads, maybe we wouldn't be looking like the Russians. Maybe we would actually look like the competent nation we've always been, because we generally let career professionals make those kinds of larger decisions and the nitty-gritty details, so that it does succeed, instead of having someone who basically doesn't know a damn thing make the plans. So anyways, a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, and I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $20 support from Peter Burrow, also known as Flash One, and thank you very much, Peter, for that support. And he said, hey, Enforcers, I hope that healthy eating is going well. So here's a little for the lettuce fund, LOL, and great show, and it's great to be here today in LSA.
And I gotta thank you massively for the support, Peterborough. And I gotta tell you, the food and healthy eating, it's going incredibly well. There's so many healthy food options around here. It's really hard to not eat healthy. So we've actually been doing quite good with that. Like there's I wish I could tell you all the different foods around here. Apparently some of them are special to the Salt Lake area. But I gotta tell you all, it's great. Like, it's unbelievably good. So a huge thanks to you for support, and thank you for supporting the Healthy Eating Fund, because we do appreciate it quite greatly. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 20 from Music Uploader who put in that 20. And thank you very much, Music Uploader, for that support as well. They said that that bridge, I assume he's referring to the B1 bridge near Karaj, is actually very critical for the IRGC to move ground reinforcements in case of a ground invasion and LSA. And it could be, possibly, if a ground invasion starts happening, it could become a critical target. But here's the catch, though. They're not saying that they're hitting the bridge for that reason. They're saying they're sending Iran back to the Stone Age, and also the bridge is apparently closed for the most part. So it could open in the event of a ground invasion. And once again, I'm not really saying it's a war crime. I'm not really saying it was justified either. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle on that strike right there. I just think it's questionable. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's, from what we know, it generally looks like it was closed down and not even open to anybody. So I don't really know how they would use it even in the future, because construction probably largely halted before we even bombed it today. So it probably wouldn't have been open by then, especially if a ground invasion happens in the next few weeks. While I almost like hiccuped on air right there, I haven't had water for hours. But outside of that, though, I'd also have to add that generally, if that was the case, wouldn't we want to wait for them to use it and then bomb it when they're on it? Like, wouldn't that do the most damage? We'd be knocking out the bridge and the IRGC units moving along it. Like, I feel like that would probably be the best move to make if that was to happen. But like Matthew's saying, it's not being phrased as we're trying to cause them military damage. We're just trying to cause unparalleled suffering in the country and knock them into the Stone Age. Not just the Iranian government, but everyone in Iran. And so that doesn't really take the kind of concept that this is necessary for warlike actions against a militant nation. This is just, it's not going well for us anymore, so F all of them, and we want them to suffer. Like, that's basically what the statement was today. And that's what puts the phrasing there to where that's really questionable, because we don't do that as the United States of America. At least in my opinion, that should never be done, because that makes the United States look uncivilized, and a lot like the Russian bastards, which we deride on air every day. And I'd be damned if we ever stoop down to the level of being some Russian bastard. That I'll never see. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Music Uploader once again, and thank you very much for the support. He said, I felt the need to qualify my previous statement. Whether we invade the Gulf or the mainland, the vast majority of the equipment that flows through the Caspian Sea gets transported down south through that bridge, and it's precedented. But also, by the way, that's just simply not the case, at least right now, because if the bridge is closed, then I'd assume it's closed to everybody. It's not just closed to civilians. It's probably closed to the military as well. So, you know, we don't know. Like, the U.S. is claiming they were using it for military transports. So I'm not going to say they're necessarily just making it up. Like, it's possible that they might have it open for some limited military movements, but I'm not really convinced that was the actual reason, personally. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm finding that to be a little unlikely as well. And I'm trying to quickly find here, folks, the Motorway 1, where this actually happened at. Let me see if I can find that somewhere down here. Try and see if I can find it, because it seems like we actually have a little bit of a... So this would be on the B1. So let me type in the B1 Motorway, Iran, and let me go see where this is. Let's see here. Oh, we need to find exactly where this is. Let's see here. So this was on the Karaj Highway, which is the B1. So where is the B1? Because I see the B2 right here. I don't see the B1. I see the B3 right there. That's the 77. That's the 79. Not really finding the 1. Well... Damn, where is it? I mean, like, Matthew, could you try and help me find this thing if you can on the side? Because I was...
Can you type it in?
I tried to type it in earlier, and it just wouldn't find it. Let me see if I can type in the B1 bridge, Iran. No, it's not finding it, like, anywhere. Like, I'm trying to type in everything that might give me a lead, and it's not finding it. That's why I put it down in between Karaj and Tehran, because I didn't really know exactly where it was. It's around Karaj somewhere, but I don't know exactly where. And let's see here.
So it looks like the bridge is. It's actually kind of hard to find it. They don't really mark it on the map for the most part, which might also suggest that the bridge wasn't finished either, because it's not even on Google for the most part. But let's see here. I'm not seeing it on the map. I'm trying to look for it right this second. Let's see. Is this it right here? It says temporarily closed. I found it. So it's apparently, punch this and you'll find it. Punch in Omid Park for a garage.
How do you spell Omid?
OMID.
Omid Park in Karaj. Hopefully that finds it.
Alborz province.
So right around here somewhere? Oh, it's right here. So
yeah, it's right there.
Well, the fact that the roadway is around here, and this satellite photography is fairly fresh. This is from 2026. So this is right before the war. I mean, the road isn't even completed to the bridge. So, I mean, it's pretty hard to make the claim this was being used by anybody because the road isn't finished. The bridge wasn't even opened yet. I mean, this satellite photography is maybe from 3 months ago or 4 months ago at best. And, I mean, they hadn't even laid the spans yet. So we can be pretty certain that they certainly didn't have this bridge open and usable at really any point of this war. And so it'd be pretty hard to make the claim. Also, on top of that, they're coming down from the Caspian Sea. Well, this is basically a connecting road around Karaj almost, which really doesn't lay the claim that this stuff is coming down from the Caspian. If it was, it would be on motorway 59 or it'd be on motorway 77, and this bridge isn't on either of those. It isn't even on, well, here's motorway 1 right here. But at that point, though, this is more so just an improvement to the traffic conditions because Motorway 2, which is right down here, still goes to Tehran, and they can still militarily reinforce and do all of their normal operations with this additional roadway here, which doesn't really appear to have any significant bridge works on it, except for the farthest bridge, which is an overpass. So I'd have to say that's a pretty hard claim to make that this thing was strategically pertinent to even hit. One, it doesn't look to have ever been opened. Two, the roadworks around it aren't even complete. I mean, look, if you get to the other side of the bridge, where the hell do you go from here? You go driving into a sand lot. There's not even a road on this side. So I think it's really hard to try and press the claim that this thing was being used for military purposes because there's no usable roadway to even get to the bridge, much less the bridge even being open to drive over it. So it clearly wasn't being used by anybody, which then at that point, it's not a war crime or anything. There's not even an argument whether this was being used primarily by the military or the civilians. Nobody was using it because there's not even a road to it. So then at that point, if anything, it's just a waste of munitions so that way we could claim that we blew up the biggest bridge. Just for the bragging right of that. And it's like, what good does that do us? Bragging rights really don't win us wars. Proper war planning wins a war. You know, like, you can get on
the biggest bridge. I'm the biggest bridge.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, like, it's... I just, like, I don't get it. Like, a lot of people are, like, you know, just going, going about this whole thing like, oh, it was definitely being used. I mean, everything that we can see right here certainly shows that it wouldn't be used by anyone at all. It wasn't even close to being finished, from what we can tell. Let's see here. Everyone posted videos and pictures of the damage. I mean, here's the thing, folks. They hadn't even put up railing on the side of the bridge. There's literal construction equipment up there in the middle of the roadway on the bridge. So how in the world is anybody using that? I mean, there's literally construction materials all over the place. It's not like they're going to drive and bob and weave through it. Like, this thing was clearly closed and being used by nobody. We just blew it up because it's a big bridge, basically. So, with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. A big thanks to your support, but I don't think that bridge was strategic in any measure at all, or even being used by anyone for that matter. But a big thanks to you once again, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Alan Trades, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Alan, as well, for that $20 support. He said, blowback.
Blowback? Well, mind it. But big thanks to you for the support, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 20 from Mary, and thank you very much, Mary, for that $20 support. And she said, is this meant to be short-term pressure or the start of a longer strategy that we're just now seeing unfold? And at what point does pressure like this turn into quiet coordination between countries, even if no one admits it?
I would have to say, generally, It's definitely it's definitely coordination, especially by the Axis powers, to try and put the West and specifically the United States in the worst strategic position possible. And at this point, we're almost playing right into their hands. So I would thank you massively for the support, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on the next one.
We also have a 20 from Scott Stankovic. And hopefully I'm saying your last name properly. But thank you very much, Scott. Man, come on, man. But thank you very much, Scott, for that $20 support. And we do appreciate that very, very much. He said, howdy, second oil tanker going to Cuba is better than going to China. And how is Cuba going to pay? Cigars? And the plan is a total realignment of world economic power. And let's see. The U.S. and is building AI chips. No need to defend Taiwan. That's actually not true, Scott. That's actually not true. They were doing that. I'm referring to the AI chips, by the way. They were planning to build a full-on like replacement to the Taiwan silicon wafer production facility inside of Taiwan. They were going to do that in Arizona, but they've actually scaled it back a little bit because I think Taiwan realized we can't just give away all of our bargaining power by replacing our chip factory here in Taiwan and putting it in the United States, or the United States might abandon Taiwan because there's no strategic reason to defend it at that point. So I think they've scaled back a bit. That's my current understanding. But also, I don't really know how Cuba's going to pay, to be perfectly honest. I'm not really sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, Cuba can pay. They do have money. They were buying oil in the past before, and people were getting paid and were fine with giving them oil for that reason. So, just kind of coming up with this fanciful concept that they have no money in Cuba is kind of unrealistic because they've been getting oil from other people for decades, which means they've had some money to pay these people with somehow. So, they still have money to pay people with. So, that kind of seems to go down the drain just because they've existed for 60 years and they've been buying stuff for 60 years. Also, on top of that, total realignment of world economics. So the whole thing is that Cuba was a threat to us. So instead of making sure that our allies at least were profiting off of that threat, we're now just going to let the Russians, which are a literal enemy of the United States without question, profit from it, which doesn't really make any sense on economic realignment. And if that's what's called smart economic realignment, call me stupid because I don't really see the sense in having the Russians be the ones solely to profit from Cuban oil trades. Also on top of that, there is a reason to defend Taiwan because Taiwan is a part of our island defense chain in the region. And if China takes it, they bypass the whole island defense chain. They torpedo commercial shipping. You can't buy, whatever you buy online or wherever. It's incredibly expensive or it's just not available. Your life is not as good. So I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Toolshed. And thank you very much, Jenna, for that $20 support. And sadly, I can't read this. Well, I don't think YouTube would like it. YouTube would probably, they probably would say something. But yeah, Jeff Bezos apparently is around here. But thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you massively for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 12 from Ukraine, EN7D, and thank you very much, Ukraine, for that $12 support. I said, hello there. Know something. You guys have a good voice for newscaster.
Whenever anyone says we have a good voice, I always think of that one meme. It's from like that football conference. You know the one I'm talking about, Matthew, in Europe, where like that translator said, "You are going to be going up against Paris tomorrow. How do you intend to beat Paris?" Hey, have you ever heard of that one?
Very erotic voice.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Man, why don't you do it again? Bro, that guy had like the most perfect teeth I'd ever seen. Like,
man, that guy's teeth, he had those those teeth that they put like on the dog, like on those like greenies, like, the bones that you give like dogs and stuff like that to chew on to like clean their teeth. And they put like the human teeth on the dog in the Photoshop and stuff like that. Like, pull up a picture of that, the dog with the teeth. Like, see if you can find it real quick because I want people to see this. It looks just like the guy, like Bro. His teeth. That guy's teeth is too perfect, too white. There it is. Look, that dog right there's got the same teeth, man. He must have gone to the same dentist.
Bro, he said, very erotic voice translator. And then he smiled and he just looked just like that. It's like, what the hell? It's like, where did he get his teeth from? It's like, let me see. If I type that in over here. Let's see. Can I find it? Yeah, this guy. Look at his teeth. they're like perfectly white and like everything. It's like insane. Look at that.
Also, how does he get like both? How does he get his entire top row of teeth to be shown like that? Like I can't even do that like normally. Like if I open my mouth and like try to smile or laugh or something, like only like the front 4 or 5 teeth that actually show. Like his entire row of teeth are showing. Like he got his money's worth out of that.
I mean, dude, so apparently this guy's name is Jürgen Klopp. And so apparently someone's saying that he had pretty bad teeth at the point, so these might be like dental implants or something. I mean, like pretty decent dental implants. I mean, if you look at him, you're gonna be like, damn, this guy's got like perfect teeth. He must be like amazing at dental care. But you know, like that meme is one of the funniest ones. Whenever anyone says that we have a good voice, I always think of that meme because that guy was like, wow, very erotic voice translator. And it was the funniest thing ever, like the way the guy reacted to it.
Is that Gazprom's logo I see behind his head?
Huh? No. Oh, wait a minute.
the
Oh, yeah.
Bro, what the hell's going on? But anyways, though, you know, I wish I had like a nice set of teeth like this. Those some teeth right there. That's like literally perfect out of the textbook.
Man, his name is Jürgen Klopp, and he got them cloppers. Like, bro, like he's got them cloppers. He's gonna be eating well, really masticating incredibly well with those teeth. But anyways,
Doing what?
mastication is a like a technical term for chewing. By the way, I have to make
I
that
would say
clear.
chewing.
Like, anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep it running, Ukraine, E&D. And also, I got to say, a huge thanks to you for the incredible support and the kind words as well. We really do appreciate the compliment. But a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Damanago, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that $10 support, by the way. I don't see a comment attached to it, but we do appreciate that support very, very much. We also have a 10 from Gnostic, who said, probably the most dependable and sober source of quality war news right here. I gotta support.
I gotta thank you so much for the incredible support, because you're helping us to be able to stay on air and keep this kind of news running every day. And so humongous thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Mechtild, who said, in reference to the Stone Age, let's see here. I don't know if I can read this one right here. This one right here is getting a little pointed. It's getting very on the nose right here. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Sadly, we can't read that one off because we probably get a cease and desist. I'm sure y'all have heard about that one guy out there. What's his name, Matthew? He's some comedian out there on the internet. Drosky, I think his name is. That guy, yeah. He's gotten a cease and desist lately for a little comedy skit he did. A lot of people throw those around these days pretty often. So you kind of got to be a little bit careful about what you say, because there's a lot of people who are kind of in the political circles or in the government who have very thin skins, and they will basically sue everyone over anything. Like, you can even just look at them the wrong way these days, and they'll say that that's maybe defamation of some sort, and they'll try and sue you for it. So I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. But sadly, due to the great legal duress and pressure that we're under, due to defamation lawsuits largely being weaponized these days, we really can't comment on that one. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a $10 support from Pretzel's Garage. And thank you very much, Pretzel, for the support. And he said, evening, Enforcer Matt. And with the gas situation, continuing to escalate in negative ways, how likely is it that we start seeing an increase of theft at gas stations and or from others' cars? And you know, that's interesting. There was a viewer that actually mentioned a while back. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was, but they were like, have you guys ever siphoned fuel? And I was like, we were like, siphon fuel? We were like, oh, of course not. We haven't siphoned fuel. Who would need to do that? Well, we might see an era where siphoning fuel might be coming back, unfortunately. I won't be doing it, me personally. I'm not like that. I'm not trying to go steal any gas and stuff like that. But, you know, maybe people might be siphoning, possibly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say, I mean, they might be siphoning in the future with how bad things are going to be getting. Y'all better make sure to, like, put, like, a little Uber Eats no-touching tape over your gas lit, so that way when you come back, you be like, like, hey, someone's been here, like, and call the police or something. Because you might get in the car and, it might not start, or if it does, it might only go like a half mile before it runs out, But still, a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And I got to thank you greatly for that support. And so a humongous thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have by the way, I see everybody saying locking gas caps coming. Every vehicle I've ever dealt with has a locking gas cap, like the little like cover on it. Like if you lock the car, it locks the gas, thing, the flap on the gas thing. Yeah, so I'm maybe older vehicles don't have like locking gas caps possibly, but all the vehicles I've seen do for the most part. I think the F-150 might not have had it if I'm not mistaken, but my vehicles have it. The ones I've had.
Oh, dude, you know something? I gotta tell you. I was talking to those railway police today. Speaking of like siphoning gas, this is kind of another dubious crime to conduct. They were saying yeah, one of the big things right now for the Union Pacific is stopping copper theft. Because apparently crackheads down in New Mexico and Arizona go wandering off into basically the railroad tracks that are in the middle of nowhere, and they literally rip up multiple miles of copper wiring at a time that control the signals for the railroads, and they just strip them up out of the ground and go sell them somewhere, apparently. So they're like, yeah, we are always basically just having to roam around out there looking for crackheads that try and rip up the copper wiring. And honestly, man, if they're that industrious that they can, if only, folks, crackheads put so much work at actually getting a job instead of stripping copper wiring out of a critical railway signaling system, maybe they would get far. But they don't, for some reason. But outside of that, though, if they're willing to do something that crazy, man, like stripping up miles of copper wiring at a time, maybe they would be crazy enough to find a way to break those locks on the gas tanks and start siphoning the gas out, maybe.
Is it automatic when you become a crackhead? You just automatically get gifted with knowledge of how to steal precious metals or something? How does that work? Because I have no idea how you'd even go about if you were hypothetically trying to do something dastardly like that. I don't even know how you'd even do something like that. just from a curiosity perspective.
Yeah, it's
but apparently it's very common knowledge.
Yeah, it's how the hell do they know how to isolate these wires so that way they don't get electrocuted and then just start stripping them up by the mile load? It's how do they go? I feel like, folks, when after you have a hit of meth, you get X-ray vision for copper. You're like Superman, but only for copper. You can see that shit from hundreds of miles away. Like a shark. You know how sharks smell blood in the water and they go for it 20 miles out? I feel like that's kind of like crackheads, man. They see a little tinge of copper wiring in an air conditioner in one single house from 20 miles away, and they just start beelining for that thing. I feel like that's what it is. Honestly, man, I feel like the folks out there at that giant mine, the Bingham Canyon mine, since it's a copper mine, they could really serve to benefit if they just told the crackheads, you can come out here and you can basically dig with your bare hands all you want, and you can keep 10% of the copper, but we get to get the other 90%.
Yeah, side note real quick. Copper is it's a natural antibacterial. Did you know that?
Yeah, I did know that, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. I found that out because I saw the fellow who runs Anduril, he was wearing a fully copper jacket. There's a company out there actually makes a jacket actually made of copper strands and stuff like that. And it's a normal textile material for the jacket, but it's all copper. So it has this weird look to it. It's also crazy expensive too, by the way. He didn't really mention that part about how expensive it was. I looked it up and I was like, holy crap. I was like, I don't want the copper jacket that bad. I can keep it for that price. But it's a natural antibacterial where it doesn't let any type of bacteria or germs, anything like that, grow on the surface, which is pretty cool. And also it has EM resistant qualities to it. So it basically acts like a light version of a Faraday cage, basically. So if you're wearing your phone in the pocket of the jacket, it's going to block a lot of signals from your cell phone because it can't get through the copper.
Man, copper is really an amazing metal, honestly. It's actually a very interesting one. Back in the day, Matthew, they actually used to have to clad sailing ships with copper tiles on the bottom part of the hull that was below the waterline, so that way the barnacles wouldn't eat straight through the wood.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting fact about that. And then when you come into port, they could retile the copper onto your ship, or they could just try and scrape the barnacles off. Usually, they always went with scraping the barnacles off because retiling a ship is incredibly expensive. But if the copper tiles ever wore down, you could pop them off and then replace them. So that's kind of interesting. Man, dude, imagine crackheads back in the day, man, like in the age of sail. Dude, you would have come into port, yar, what the hell? You would look under the water and they're just holding their breath, ripping the copper tiles off the bottom of your ship, like barnacles and everything. But anyways.
Man, I'll tell you, I feel like wearing the copper jacket in some places is kind of like, like putting a person in the water and they have like, like fish, fish like chum or something like surrounding them. That's like a horrible thing. Like you can't walk through certain areas of the country wearing a copper jacket. You're going to get ripped to shreds. You're going to be in some deep trouble.
Man, also, someone said you'd smell like pennies. I hate to say to y'all folks, if y'all don't know, but pennies are raw zinc. They're just copper clad. So they look like copper pennies, but in reality, all modern pennies are actually zinc. They're not copper. So very sad fact about them. That's something else y'all probably don't know a lot about our coins, is that back in the 60s, they did this to all of our coins. Our quarters and stuff used to actually be made out of 90% silver back in the day. But once we got off of the gold standard, we started to make most of our coins, actually all of them, out of a substitute metal that was a lot cheaper. So pennies, instead of being made out of pure copper like they used to be, and you can tell because they tarnish terribly, they're actually made out of zinc and they're copper coated. All of our quarters, I think, and a lot of the other coins are also made out of zinc and similar other metals because they have absolutely no precious metals inside of them whatsoever anymore. You would have to get stuff from like back in the 60s and earlier to find anything that's made out of 90% silver or anything along those lines. So I hope that does address that the best I can. A little interesting fun fact for y'all to know about our modern currency here in this country. And also the penny is over now. They don't have pennies, and now everything's rounded up to the nearest nickel. So a little bit of a shame with that, at least in my opinion. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Alfhednar, who puts in a 10 and said, considering we kind of screwed the Iranian people by telling them to go into the streets and then they got shot and we would have their back. Now, because their morale has been crushed, we are going to punish them? What's going on?
I don't even know. And generally, I think this is why none of them went out into the streets, because they found out they were being conned kind of like a little bit from the start. Because when you tell people go out in the streets and if anyone harms a hair on your head, we're going to blow up the Iranian government and then they kill 40,000 people, and then it's about another month or so until we do anything to the Iranian government. And even then, we don't really do anything to the Iranian government over that. We come up with a whole other reason to start the war. Generally a lot of people are going to lose enough faith. They're not going to do anything for us anymore because they don't trust us. And trust is a very hard thing to gain and very easy to lose. And I think that we lost it completely in mid-January when that happened. And I was saying that then. Some people didn't want to believe me then. But that's how it works. I mean, the analysis is the analysis. It's as straightforward as it is. And just knowing normal humans like myself, if someone told me to go out in the streets with a whole bunch of other people and protest the government, and then, the National Guard gunned down a whole bunch of people in the streets, and then I got told again to go back out in the streets and we'd really be there for you, I wouldn't believe a damn word that they were saying at that point, because, well, hell, you weren't there for me and anyone else that was killed and around me last time. Why the hell would I trust you this time? That's what I'd think. But a huge thanks to you for the support and help with this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And Matthew, are you good?
Man, I'm good. I'm good.
Man, he just beeping out a little Morse down in there. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
Our next one goes to Star, who put in a 10. And thank you for that support, by the way. They said a bunch of negative Nancys. My name's not Nancy, also, by the way. They said, listen, just because we got the COD Ghost timeline and not the Black Ops 2 timeline doesn't mean everything will be awful. The fish AI is going to be sick.
I mean,
the fish
maybe.
AI, did I miss something?
I think we probably did at this point. I think we probably did, maybe. We'll have to find out. But, who's to say? Who's to say? But a big thanks to you once again for that support. And we're not trying to be negative Nancy's. We're just looking at things realistically. It's analysis, after all. But a huge thanks to you once again. And we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from Eileen. And thank you for that support. They said, thanks for keeping us informed. And one day on the other side, things will get better.
Hopefully so. I would agree with you, Aline. And a huge thanks to you once again for support and help with this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Robert Krogan, and thank you, Robert, as well. He said, good evening, enforcers and LSA, and this might get you 1 gallon of gas. And yes, it might do 1 gallon of the gasoline, the refined type, the type that gets refined. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say, big thanks to your support, and sadly that's true at this point. That is 1 gallon of gas. Not too long ago, that would have been about 2 gallons of gas, actually. So huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Tabitha Silver. She said, "Hello, gentlemen, and hope your evening is great, and just doing my weekly check-in."
And thank you so much for the support, and we're doing quite well. And thank you for the weekly check-in and the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from AZ, who said, "Keep in mind that the Iranian people are extremely pro-American and pro-Israel, and they hate the regime, so we don't want to push them away from us."
I would agree, but seems to be lost on the current administration. Honestly, giving any recommendations, in any sort of good intention to the current administration is completely amiss. They don't listen to shit. Like they don't listen to anyone from their current advisors. They don't listen to anyone from the public, because there is one guy there, and he knows everything. And if you say that he doesn't know everything, that's a personal insult to his character, and now you're a mortal enemy that must be destroyed. I'll tell you all this, folks. I say that because we have dealt with someone like that. I'm not going to say who, but it's ultimately destructive, and there's no room to stand to gain anything in that sort of a situation. It's basically a lose-lose if you even deal with them at all, which is something that some people have found out the hard way. But anyways, I hope that does address it the best I can. But I'd be entirely straight up with you. I mean, like that's a very good recommendation, AC. But the current guy knows literally everything. He's the best at everything. He just knows so much about everything. He's never going to listen to any of us or anyone in the government. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 10 from DWRB, and he said, "Late night reinforcements reporting for duty, LOC, and I hope everyone had a wonderful Thursday, and also hang in there." And also, apparently this weekend is Easter. I didn't even realize that until someone said it just a minute ago. So Friday, I believe, is a day off, I think, for most people, and then the weekend is Easter, which everybody knows what that is. So I forgot all about it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, well, a big happy Easter to everyone. I actually have to say, sadly, I've forgotten about that one as well. We've been so busy lately. I haven't really been paying a lot of attention, sadly, to the holidays and stuff. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say a big happy Easter to everyone. So big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 777 from A Grain of Salt. And thank you very much, A Grain of Salt, for that support. They said, "Because of your guys' extensive coverage and analysis, I turned my mountain bike into an e-bike." Oh, no, also that's possible.
Oh.
But they said, "Super excited and glad I did it with gas money." And thank you very much, and LSA. I will say that if Salt Lake City wasn't car dependent, I would probably actually consider selling my car and just, biking around or something like that. That's what I would do, actually, is I really don't have a need for a car, like, going to work and such like that, because I work from home, obviously. So, I didn't know you could turn a mountain bike that's already like a normal bike into an e-bike. That sounds pretty cool, though. But Enforcer, what say you?
That's actually pretty neat. I didn't know you could do that either. But I gotta say, big congrats to you. I hope it's really cool. It sounds like it would be really cool. And a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope we were able to address that well. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Noel P, who said, "How many roads lead to the strait, and what if they destroy the roads?"
Well, generally all roads lead everywhere in the larger sense, and you could try and destroy all of them, but roads are pretty hard to destroy permanently or even temporarily. So I would say that the best idea is just to try and strike the forces that are around the strait, in my honest opinion. So big thanks to you for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 5 from Dalton, and thank you, Dalton, for that support. He said, "Let's just hope this reckless strategy doesn't lead to, the rising of ISIS again 20 years from now."
Oh, no, you don't have to worry about that. That was all bungled earlier this year when we allowed Jelani to take over Syria, and then they started releasing ISIS fighters in the thousands. I mean, that one's already been screwed up, and we'll probably see that coming around to the head in a couple of years. Totally forgot about that one. Like you actually just reminded me of that one. I had literally forgotten that was a humongous travesty that happened earlier on at the end of last year and the beginning of this one, because there's been so many things going on that you just kind of forget about some of the smaller, well, what seems to be for now smaller strategic blunders that have been conducted as well. But a huge thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Good Brother, who said a lot of markets are closed on Friday. Excuse me. And the big players exited stuff like they normally do on Friday, and that is a major reason for the big moves today.
And I thank you for the support. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from 2TRD33D Gaming, who said, what would Reggie do?
Oh, Reggie be getting down to business. I mean, Reggie would have done this right. But a big thank you for supporting. With that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Echo, who said, could the U.S. bring back the draft?
You could. It would take an act of Congress to do it, but I don't think we should. And I gotta say, I find it really funny. There's been a comedian out there. I'm not gonna say their name, but there's been a comedian out there who's really saying that he's a big fan of the draft. Now, I'm pretty sure. I want to just check this here really quickly. Let me check this specific person off air because I just want to make sure. Okay, so. Yes, I see. Yeah. So, the guy's never served himself in the military. So where the hell does he get off saying everyone else has got to go into a draft? That's kind of my thing, Like with all these people who are really big fans of the draft, a lot of them have never even served at all. So who the hell are they to say that now there needs to be a draft for those youngins to learn some discipline? Where the hell was the draft for their asses? Where was it? That's kind of my thing about that whole deal. It's like, maybe the folks who are like, in their 60s and they were never drafted, and they don't really know what that's really like, and they're just detached from reality, so they say stuff. Maybe they ought to just sit down and, kind of like shut up a little bit about that kind of stuff, because I think that they're not really even in the group to say that. You know what? I think a better thing, folks, if a draft starts, everybody who's in support of it right now, regardless of age, will have to put themselves down on the draft registry, and they will be drafted in the first waves. And we will keep drafting those people until we run out of them, regardless of age and regardless of physical ability, and they will all have to serve a minimum of 2 years in the armed forces, and once that's done, they can leave. How about that, folks? I think that's a great idea, because I find it silly that so many people who are not in the age bracket to be drafted, and Matthew isn't one of them, and I would be medically disqualified because I'm pretty messed up physically. With the whole scoliosis and blood pressure.
We could get you a waiver.
Oh, they give me a waiver eventually, but by that point, a war would have had to have gone on so long I would have been out of the drafting age, at least the initial drafting age. But they probably extended by then if they were in that desperate need of men. But outside of that, though, I think that that's what we should do because, I find it interesting, folks, how a lot of people are gung-ho to volunteer other people for mandatory military service when they're not applicable for it. So that's what we should do. We should have them all sign up for the draft registry, and then and only then we're going to draft them first. And then everyone else can have their turn as well. But I want to make sure, because they have a voice, that they make sure to exercise their opinion and put their money where their mouth is, in a sense. But with that, I hope that does address that well, in my opinion. But honestly, the truth is, a draft is a bad idea. Conscripts are highly unmotivated, usually very low morale, and very undisciplined because they don't want to be there. It's not good to have conscripts unless if it's absolutely necessary. So conducting a draft for the hell of it is really dumb, to be entirely honest. And I think that's why it would be shot down. And it's also going to be wildly unpopular publicly, because a lot of people are going to be big fans of it until their son gets drafted and killed in some war overseas, and then they're going to be like, hey, I don't really like that anymore. And it's like, yeah, that's what we were trying to say beforehand. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one here is going to go to none other than Jesusium. And thank you, Jesusium, for that 5. They said, why the U.S. sees Russian-linked ships in early 2026, which is great, but then allow oil to Cuba. I'm confused.
We are as well. We can't even explain it, to be entirely honest. I just don't even know. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 5 from Laser, who said, will Iran dead man switch Karg Island? If they can't control it, then no one will.
I mean, they might, they definitely could try and do something like that, but they'll probably do that after we take it over. They'll start just slamming everything on the island and generally knock out its usable capabilities, because at that point, they'll probably be operating off of a scorched earth kind of a concept. But a big thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and I hope that does address that well, quite well, as a matter of fact. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have another 5 from Jesusium. And thank you once again. They said, watching y'all drinking a beer and petting the cat over here. And also, y'all need a kitten and might be ready in 10 weeks, lol.
And I thank you for the support. And generally, I'm fine. Sadly, we can't really take care of animals because we work so much. It's really hard to fit an animal into the schedule of any kind. But I do thank you massively for the support and help the channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Civil Defense who said, I'm off to bed, and God bless the UK. And also, best of luck to the UK, by the way. And also, thank you very much for the support. We also have a 2 from David Sillers, who did not leave a comment, but thank you, David, for that support as well. We also have a 2 from Solar Independent Systems, who said, hi from Solar Independent Utility Systems, Manual.
Oh, and a big hello to you over there. And a big thanks to you for support. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Chickadee, who said the AG was fired today as well.
Yeah, I heard about that. Little interest in there, you know. I remember there was some sort of a defense made at a congressional hearing a little while. The Dow is up 50,000 points, I think I heard. Well, I guess they didn't
say it right.
How are you supposed to say it?
Man, the Dow is 50,000.
Well, go ahead then. Man, that sounds so
down.
I ain't got no tail down.
I ain't got no tail, girl.
You gotta like deep fry the mic too. Oh man,
I would, but it's gonna blow. Man, I ain't on my phone paying. I'm doing business. Oh my lord!
I can't remember that other guy's catchphrases. That dude was crazy. That dude. I can't remember. He was a city councilman for somewhere. I think it was like
Flint,
maybe
Michigan,
Detroit or something, or Michigan. I'm somewhere in Michigan. The dude was crazy.
Oh man, you remember that one time he walked in, he said, play. Man, even when he was talking normally somehow without a microphone, he sounded deep fried. He said, play my music. And then they started playing a theme song for him when he walked in. That was so weird, honestly. Yes, you do. But anyways, beyond that, though, yeah, that's interesting.
Yes, you do.
Brother, that was perfect. Dude, absolutely perfect on this end, bro. But beyond that, though, I heard that she did get removed, and honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I don't really have any sad feelings about that. I mean, you know, when you get up and talk about some sort of a possible criminal action that was conducted some while ago, and then you use the defense, the economy's doing good, so this clearly doesn't matter. That doesn't really, bode well with me, to be entirely honest.
Man. Another career down the toilet, just like that, like flush, just straight down the toilet. Also, by the way, folks, believe it or not, we Andrew actually like shook hands with him one time. He just happened to be in like a right spot, working in a certain place. Can get to me, yeah, right place, right time, working in a certain place. Happened to shake hands with a fella. The first attorney general for the current president was, what's his name again? Remind me,
Senator
I forgot
Sessions.
Yes, Jeff Sessions. That was the first attorney general. He's one of the first people to openly support the current president way back in the day, around 2016 or so. And he got in there. He said no to something, and he was the first casualty of the whole situation. And from there, everybody found out how it went from that point forward. But that poor fellow there kind of got his career ruined as well out of the same situation.
So what happened back then is that there was an investigation going on that the Attorney General's office was conducting as a part of a larger Department of Justice investigation. The president allegedly called up the Attorney General, which was Sessions, and demanded that he do something like drop the investigation. And the Attorney General, which was Sessions, said he couldn't do that because that would be unlawful and that would be against the process. And so then he was removed from his position. And then he was treated like a dog afterwards when he was one of the first supporters of the current guy. And I'm not gonna lie with y'all folks. The guy was from Alabama, and generally because folks, here's how I put it: the most important thing is the city. The next important thing is the state, and the third least important thing is the federal government. So dissing on a state representative wrongfully when they're following a legal process, not really something I'm a big fan of. And that was one of the things where I was like, I don't really like that at all. So,
Apparently, Jeff said no. Apparently, that's why the whole falling out happened, is because he refused to apparently go along with whatever the whole plan was behind the scenes. So he basically bowed out of it, and that's what got him in some trouble. And then after that, his entire reputation got tarnished. After that, he got dragged through the mud. So I don't even know what happened to Jeff. Like I think he's back in Alabama or something. I don't know where he went. He was from our area, like where we grew up. Like he was the representative of the area. But I don't even know where he went. Like he disappeared after that whole thing.
Yeah. And also another thing is that I mean he's not a bad guy at all. He's a pretty nice guy. I mean he was doing what he was supposed to do when he got steamrolled. But the thing like I'm not trying to be and I have to make this wildly clear. I'm not trying to be political here, folks, but I have a pattern recognition in my brain like everyone does. The current guy is basically a steamroller. If you kiss this guy's ass and then you get a position because of that, you're eventually going to end up being in his grace and then out of his grace getting steamrolled and destroyed by him in about less than a year. That basically happens to everybody. I mean, if you look at the turnover rate the first go around, I mean, it was insane. I mean, people would come in and you would pick the greatest people, they're the best people, and then by the end of it, they'd be the absolute worst sons of bitches, real crooks. They need to go to prison. They might even need to be put up, for some sort of execution even. And that's just how it works. It's like, I look at that, and that's also why, folks, if we ever got asked, would you like to be an advisor to the current president? I'm just going to be straight up with you. I'd say hell no, because it wouldn't be before long before we would be getting tweeted about how big of bastards and stuff we are just for saying, that's not a good idea or something one time. And that's something I wouldn't want to be a part of. But anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
We also have a 2 from Mark Andre Brunette. And thank you very much, Mark, for that support. And also a big shout out to Plazoth, who put in a 2 as well. And we do appreciate you, Plazoth, for that support and also helping to keep us running. We also have a 2 from Echo, who said, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, which means what the F?
What the F? Like, man, like,
son of a bitch. You thought I was about to say bitch.
son of a bitch gun. You thought I was gonna say son of a bitch. But beyond that, big thanks to your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that in mind, folks, we actually have a couple of minutes here to be able to try and gather some live chats. And of course, we have to get to the Morse code Dakotas of the stream. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so apparently the Morse code was the same as last night again, from the looks of it.
Yeah.
But a huge shout out to our roster for trying to solve it, and we do appreciate that for y'all solving it nonetheless. And hopefully we'll have it changed tomorrow. But we also have some live chat questions to address, and our first one is going to go to Thomas, who said, "Have you discussed the U.S. Lucas drones, the reverse-engineered Shahed?"
We have talked about them. It's just that we see them so rarely used. They haven't really been a big facet of the conflict so far. They're kind of more like a small fry, kind of artisanal thing in the corner, because we hardly have any proof to show they're being used in any numbers at all. But a huge thanks to you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And that was a live chat. I was looking at that super chat there, and I got massively confused. But a big thanks to you for a great question there. And with that, we're on to a super chat now.
So we have an Australian viewer that has come in here, and they've decided to lay down a 20 Australian support. And we do appreciate it very much from Dom Green 7. And of course, thank you very much for that. There's no comment to address though, but thank you for helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
And we got to thank you massively for helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in any comments or anything there, but we still massively appreciate it. And we got to thank you incredibly for helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you and your support, this channel wouldn't be able to be here, right now. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a question from the live chat from none other than the Dirty Bubble, who said, would destroying the roadways coming to and going from the bridge inside of Iran be viable targets instead of the bridge?
Technically, but that's if they exist, and from what we can tell, they don't exist. I mean, they're not even completed. So, that'd be a pretty hard thing to destroy a gravel path, because, a gravel path, you put a crater in that, they literally just covered in gravel. So, it's no real difference at all. So, I mean, yeah, you could, but it's not really going to do any real damage at this point. But I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And this one's going to go to AF Kaplan, who said, what impact will this purge of U.S. generals have on the battlefield in Iran, and how disruptive do you think it'll be? Now, you know what's interesting is one of the generals that was removed, and still not really sure about the circumstances about the removal itself. He was the Joint Chief of the Army, actually. So he was the top-ranking fella for the most part, and he was one of the guys who helped basically modernize or try to start modernizing the Army and also drones and integrating that into the Army itself. And also, he had a very long history, by the way. So he wasn't just like some random dude. He had a history in the Army, and he also had a lot of progress he was making as well. So for all the people trying to smear him, all of a sudden, it's like, he served honorably. He did a good job, and I won't go any further than that. But he's got more integrity than some people. Let's just put it that way. So, Enforcer, what say you?
Well, you know how it is with a certain group of people, they love the military and they respect the military. And how dare you ever question anyone in the military until they come under the fire of the Blessed One, and then, they're bastards, and they always were, and they were crooks and everything. My 2 cents on that would be, it's going to have an impact for sure, but we don't even know to what extent it will be, at least at this point yet. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
We also have one from Cyber who said, do you think that with the oil crisis, we're going to see a surge in electric vehicles hitting the streets?
Probably not, because utility prices are going to rise, and generally our energy grid is already kind of maxed out for the most part, and it would require significant infrastructure improvements to take on that sort of a heavy load. And generally, from what I know, a lot of people probably don't have the expendable income to just go and try and trade in their car for, a Tesla or so. I don't really think that would be possible for most people. Speaking for myself, it wouldn't really be possible for me. So, assuming that a lot of other people are in, similar or worse position, they probably wouldn't be able to do it either. So I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And we have one from Linda, who said, do you think that China will try to negotiate an opening to the strait? And rumor has it Pakistan is offering to help in negotiations, and if true, it will shift power towards China, right?
Yeah, it would shift power towards China, I would assume. So I would say yeah. And so big thanks to you for a great question. With that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
Also, something else fascinating. The ongoing Pakistan-Afghanistan war that's still going on. You don't hear very much about it because it's kind of getting overshadowed by the Iran situation, but there's still an ongoing war between the Taliban and the Pakistani military.
Yeah, and they're having that negotiated in China, actually.
Yeah, that's not good. It's like we don't want China to start becoming, the country that everybody runs to when they need help, because that's supposed to be the United States. Usually, when countries run to somebody, they're running to the person they think has the most power to try to broker the situation. So if you see Afghanistan and Pakistan running to China instead of the United States, that indicates they think that China has more leverage and power, and they're running to them instead, which isn't a good sign.
Yeah, I would have to say. Also, it shows that they believe that the Chinese would be more reliable and level-headed, which those are not good things that you want to see. I hope that addresses that question well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
So we also have a $20 support from Crispy once again. And thank you, Crispy, for the second support of the night. Still no comment to address, though, but we appreciate that support right there. It's just raw support, just straight up. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you massively for that support, Crispy. Real crispy Colonel there. And a big thanks to you once again for the support and help of this channel to keep on running. And with that, we're on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to MB, who said, is it possible that the Chinese drone was being used by the IRGC? And I've seen chatter on Iranian news channels that it was their own drone shot down by their own people.
I would doubt it. I don't believe that we know of any wing longs that are being used by the Iranian military from what I know. So I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Diminished Hope, who said, is it possible that if the war goes badly enough and Israeli air defense continues to falter, would Israel go nuclear?
It's possible. I mean, it's not out of the question. With how the Israeli government handles a war, really everything's on the table, and kind of like how the U.S. is kind of currently conducting its war planning. Whatever kicks the hornet's nest the most is kind of what the Israelis are going to do. So with that in mind, I would say it's not out of the question, but if they ever conducted an action like that, that would have to be internationally condemned. Just to put that out there flatly, I would never see a situation at this point where the Israelis could justify the use of a nuclear weapon on the Iranians. No matter how much they try and argue that it's necessary, off of a million different reasons and explanations, that would be completely uncalled for in every way, because Iran is a non-nuclear power, meaning that there really is no way to justify the use of a nuclear weapon on them just because you're losing a conventional war quite badly. So with that, I hope that does address it the best I can, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be able to cover this news for each and every single one of y'all. And we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news from around the world. And also, if there is a short war video to be made, Enforcer Matt will once again be making that short war video. So with that, we will see you all.
I did it today.
Well, yeah, but remember, though, I gave up my day to go track the big boy. Like, today was my day, and then I gave it to you. So tomorrow is actually your day again. So
I mean, I'm not complaining. I like short war videos.
I mean, he ain't complaining. but beyond that, with that, y'all will be getting a short war video from Enforcer Matt again, if there is one to be made. But with that, if there isn't, we will see you all tomorrow around the same time like we did tonight. And so with that, folks, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, Ram Slava. Long live the Lee Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, a huge shout out to the over 150,000 plus people that joined us by the end of the stream tonight. And we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next day of news coming out, of course. And we'll see what tomorrow brings, because we're approaching the weekend. And the weekend is an interesting time. Every single weekend that rolls around, it's always time to sit at the TV and see what the hell is happening. So instead of sitting at the TV, because, mainstream media is not that great anymore, y'all can sit right here on YouTube. And guess what? It's free on YouTube. It's a lot better than paying for cable, where you had to watch nonstop ads and stuff like that. And guess what? Not only is the channel free to watch, but also you don't even have to watch an ad to watch the live stream. So that's even better. A double whammy, they say. But thank you all once again for joining us tonight. We will see you all tomorrow. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava. Get some rest and good night.